Call to order the regular board meeting of June 18th, 2019 at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by the board.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer LaFata. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Barry is here.
All members are present. Item number 4A, we have two presentations tonight. 4A is a presentation of the 2018 Township Audit by Plante Moran.
Do this. Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and board. This is Dave Harrington, your audit partner colleague. Pam Hill has a recital tonight. Well, actually, her daughters do. So I'm, which I've worked with the Township Board in the past. So I'm here to do the presentation with Amanda and Andrew, who will be taking us through the financial highlights for the Charter Township of Chesterfield, December 31st, 2018 audit results. So tonight, in lieu of going through the entire audit, we do have financial highlights. Will be up on the screen. I get to start off with this, your auditor's opinion result, which is the best opinion you can get. It's called a non-modified opinion. It's the one you should be hoping for and should expect. And what that means is that the financial information included in the audit is accurate, and you can rely upon it for your decision making. So what we thought we would do is we will go through each one of the slides. I'm going to move the mic over there so it's closer to the source. And then if you have any questions on any of the slides at the time of the slide, feel free to ask the question. If you want to wait till the end, we'd be happy to entertain questions at the end on the full audit, the slide packet that's in front of you, or our report to management. So with that, I'm going to head on over to Andrew.
Thanks, Dave. As Dave mentioned, my name is Andrew Leong. I've been involved with the audit of Chesterfield Township for the last 5 years. You haven't seen me up here yet, but I'm going to take you through some of the financial highlights, and just keep in mind that the financial statements you received should have more detail as well, and this is going to be fairly high level. So if you have questions as we go through, feel free to ask. The first slide is everyone's favorite fund, the general fund, and this is a trend of the revenue sources of the general fund over the past 5 years, from 2014 to 2018. And you can see how it's broken up. The majority of your revenues are coming from intergovernmental, that's your state shared revenue, and the second largest being property taxes, followed by charges for services. So it's been relatively stable over the past 5 years, from 7.8 to 7.2 million between that mark, and in the end of 2018 we ended with $7.2 million in revenue within the general fund, made up primarily again out of the state shared revenue. Slide 2, this is your expenditures in the general fund over the past 4 years. And again, it's broken out by source, or I guess use in this case. The majority, as you can see, is from your general government, and so that most of that is being spent on general governmental purposes. With the exception of 2016, there was a relatively large transfer of $3.5 million that was transferred from the general fund to the police fund, and that's why you see in 2016 a much larger portion of that expenditures relating to capital outlay, debt service, and transfers. That's what that was, and as we go through, you'll see that reflected elsewhere. The other thing I wanted to point out is that this year we ended the year with $6.4 million in total expenditures in the general fund, which is very consistent with what we had last year in terms of expenditure mix and in terms of total expenditures. Slide 3, this is our fund balance within the general fund, and showing how it's broken out, again, with a 4-year trend from 2014 to 2018. Just as a quick reminder, GASB 54 allows for 5 different types of fund balance. There's non-spendable, which is all of the amounts of fund balance that cannot be spent in terms of prepaids, inventory, things like that. There's restricted fund balance, which legally cannot be spent. There's a legal restriction on it. There's committed fund balance, which is fund balance is formally set aside by board resolution and can only be used, again, with a board resolution. There's assigned fund balance, which is expressing intent to use something, but no obligation to use fund balance. And then there's unassigned, which is, again, loose fund balance that can be used for whatever purpose the general fund desires generally. So as you can see, again, there was a dip in 2016 related to the transfer to the police fund, and then it's been continuing to climb up through 2018. You will notice as well in 2018 there was a significant portion of fund balance that was assigned. And again, in your financial statements, you'll see that $4 million of that related to assignment for future capital improvements. Around $800,000 of that is a budgeted amount for fund balance use from your 2019 budget. And then another $60,000 of that assignment relates to senior center funds. So that's why there's an additional assignment this year. Moving on to the next slide. This is your public safety fund, statement of revenue and expenditures and fund balance, or a summary of revenue, expenditures, and fund balance over the last 4 years. One thing I will note when we come to this slide, though, is that for 2014 through 2017, this is showing the aggregate of the former police, fire operating, and fire equipment funds. As in 2018, those were all combined into a single public safety fund. So we combined those from the prior years just to get some comparison going between the three of those funds and between those years. So again, in 2016, we can see there was a significant increase in revenue related to that transfer. And then in 2018, we ended with $12.8 million in revenue, 13.4 in expenditures, and an ending fund balance of 9.6. The next slide is the same presentation, but with your water and sewer fund. And again, it's revenues and expenditures from 2014 to 2018. And as you can see, it's been fairly consistent each year. One of the things I will note on this slide is that the fund balance from 2017 reflects the implementation of GASB 75, which Amanda's going to talk about a little bit more the rest of our presentation, which changed the way we measure OPEB, which had an effect on fund balance, especially the water and sewer fund balance from 2017. One of the things I wanted to point out again is in 2018, our revenues were $16.4 million as compared to expenses of $15.7 million, and we ended the year with a fund balance of roughly $57 million, which is pretty consistent with where it's been over the past 5 years. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, and she's going to...
Andrew, that's a net position, not fund balance.
Yes, net position, sorry. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda now to talk to you about some of the legacy costs.
Thank you. Okay, the next couple slides we're going to look at the township's legacy costs primarily related to pension and OPEB. So this slide that you're looking at here shows where those two liabilities are at the end of your calendar year. You can see on the left-hand side is your pension. So the most recent valuation is as of December 31st, 2017. The number at the top of that column represents the township's total liability. So the total liability is $39.5 million. The township has funded to date almost $31 million, which leaves the difference between those two as the unfunded liability of a little over $8.5 million. So as you'll see in a second here, just the trend over the last few years. But as a summary for your OPEB, on the flip side related to your health care, your total liability ended at $34.5 million, just over that. You've funded so far just over $23 million, leaving a delta or a net liability, if you will, of $11.5 million. Now, if you add those two orange boxes you see there, your total liability for legacy costs is just over $20 million. Now, the township has made great strides in reducing that, and you'll see that on the next couple slides. But we just encourage the township to keep your eye on that and keep working toward funding those liabilities and keeping that as a focus. So as I mentioned, I do want to talk a little bit about the trend and where the township has been in relation to funding these liabilities. This slide is related to pension specifically. So you'll see while the total liability has grown, you've also funding, your funding percentage has grown as well. So your pension is just over 78% funded, but again, your unfunded portion of that liability does remain at $8.5 million. Switching to OPEB, or your healthcare costs for your retirees. This slide looks a little colorful. The first three columns represent the measurement under the old standard before the township adopted a new standard this year. As Andrew mentioned, that standard doesn't really change the fact that you have always had this liability. What it does change is how often you need to measure it and the measurement of that liability. So you'll see in your 2014 valuation, you had roughly a $25 million liability. That did jump up significantly, but again, that's due to the change in the measurement of that liability under that new standard. So you'll see that your unfunded portion hasn't changed too much, but I just wanted to point that out. So again, at the end of 2018, you do have an unfunded portion of that liability of about $11.5 million. So while the township again has focused on this, and the OPEB is about 67% funded at this point, again, just keeping your eye on that liability to the best that you can would definitely be a good planning. Are there any questions so far on the slide presentation?
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Through the chair to the auditors, is the unfunded, you said keep an eye on the unfunded, is there a standard for how soon that should be paid or brought up to 100% or 95, whatever the standard might be? First of all, what is the optimum? What should be funded at what level, and then how long should we plan to get there?
Sure. So one difference between your pension and your health care liability is you're required to fund your pension periodically throughout the year, and your actuary tells you how much to fund, and you're required by state law. OPEB is a little different in the fact that you're not required to do that. You're not required to pre-fund it. So I would say the township has taken great strides, certainly, and is well ahead of the ball on your healthcare costs, just because you have set aside a significant amount of funds for your retiree healthcare costs. There really isn't a threshold per se. I mean, the goal, right, is to be 100% funded, but there is no mandate in the amount of time you have to get there. Your actuary does project it for you, but there really is no timeline per se. Sure.
And to add to what Amanda said, especially on healthcare, I'm sure you're quite aware that the state is really looking at communities and what their funding level here is. And if you're below a certain percentage, you have to have a remediation plan. The good news is Chesterfield is not in that camp. So that's great. You can control your own destiny without the state having to jump in. But as you can see, even though you saw in 4 years the amount of assets you have jumped $9 million, your liability stayed the same number. There's still 11 million standing out there. There's 11 million or 10 million 4 years ago. So it's a pretty, if you didn't do what you did the last 4 years, this chart wouldn't look as strong. So I think it's very important. So while the state isn't coming down on communities that are in the 60-70% funded level, it just makes sense, because if you don't continue to focus on it, it's going to take up, down the road, it's going to take up a greater percentage of your total expenditures, and there'll be less funds available for services. So it's being able to smooth that over the next decade is really the wise move. And I use the word decade, but over a reasonable amount of time, because you know, if every day was like today in the stock market, this thing would be fine by the end of the year. Well, don't look at last week. So it's very, very, it's a long-term play, and you do have to take it seriously as a board. It's one of those ones where once you think you're in good shape, that's probably a bad feeling. You need to always keep an eye on that.
Thank you. One quick comment. This was, you're going to see a lot of changes here in our next valuation. So this board knows very well what we went through to make sure that this township was sustainable 2 years ago. And you're going to see that trend change quite a bit as the next evaluations come on because of the actions we took with agreements last year. Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
So the question I had was sort of a continuation of Trustee Vosberg's. In terms
Yes.
of the OPEB funding, that usually becomes a fairly hotly contested item when we're doing budget, because we don't have any requirements in terms of how much or how little, and so it lends itself to budget gimmickry. You know, we can underfund or go less than we did the year before and make up differences in other parts of the budget. Now, when you talk about the actuarial projections, do they also look at the sort of our workforce? What I mean by that is the age of our workforce and the potential utilization by our employees as they, begin to retire and then move into that liability category. Do we know, or are we just basing it on the number of retirees in the pool right now?
So the actuaries look at all those factors. They look at history, they look at tracking, the age of your workforce, the age of your retiree force. One of the assumptions is the life expectancy. So as people live longer, this liability goes up. As the supervisor mentioned, as you look at benefits and how you are providing benefits, that can either increase or decrease that liability. And part of that whole funding story and what's the right number to fund is really, as best you can, getting your arms around what the liability is now under the new benefit package and how it will be utilized. And that is part of the actuarial calculation. So I don't think if there's an actuary in the room, they can jump in, but which is, it's an amazing science, but they come up with this number, and I like to say in 50 years I'll tell you whether it's right or not, because it's really a lot of projections and estimation. And as you change benefits to right size your budget, then that liability does adjust. So as the new one comes out, I'd say you want to look at that in concert with your current budget and say, is this appropriate long term? Because you don't want to say, well, okay, we went up 2%, let's not put any money in, we're in good shape, because then next year you got to catch up. So it is a matter of being fiscally responsible each year and balanced, because one of the reasons you saw that assigned portion in your general fund balance for capital projects is just to make sure it gets out there and everybody recognizes we have some future capital needs that are going to have to be addressed, and let's just point that out so we don't lose sight of it. So same thing with this.
Thank you. Just in terms of the presentation, there's more to the presentation.
I don't,
Some follow-up
any further
questions?
comments on the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Dave to wrap up.
Yeah.
Some further questions, and maybe we'll come back up one more time.
Great.
I don't see any further questions.
Yeah, so in wrapping it up, I'd like to, again, thank the township, the board, and working closely with a number of the department heads, with your finance director, and just a lot of hours go into it. There's a lot of new accounting pronouncements that are being unfunded mandates, and I didn't write them, but we have to audit them, and Vicki has to make sure they get into your audit. There's a lot of new ones coming in the next year, and so to get an unmodified opinion isn't a layup. There's a lot of work that goes into that, so we'd like to thank everybody for their efforts there. And we also had a report to management that talked about we didn't have disagreements with your folks. We addressed a lot of concerns, and we looked at a lot of things. We have some comments of how for improvements and things like that. But so if I have any questions, I'd be happy to take those. But with that, we are set.
This will just be a receive and file unless if the board has any other questions or comments.
Just a quick one. I know we got a big agenda tonight. Just a little bit deeper of a dive. Your presentation sort of encapsulates what the board got, which
Correct.
was your much more detailed financial report summary. Just drawing your attention to the slide 5 on our public safety fund. Our expenditures came in at $14 million, and our revenues roughly 12.7. In addition, on your financial report, the number that I noticed was $600,000 upside down, $650,000 in terms of fund balance. This year, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so what I'm wondering, and just offer, if you were able to offer an opinion, and maybe this is something that we would re-engage you when we get to our public safety budget crunch, but we've had some talk about a reduction. There are members of the board who think a reduction in the 8 mil special assessment is doable. I'm concerned about a short-term blip, so we changed some things contractually and we reduced legacy costs potentially as a result of those changes, those contractual changes. So we'll see some positive numbers as a result of that, but we're still losing, our expenditures don't keep pace with our revenue quite substantially. And we also have some capital improvements in the public safety that really spends down, in particular, the fire fund, with the capital improvements to the fire stations and so forth. I wonder if you can offer an opinion on revenue. Are we at a place where we start looking at reduction in revenue or lowering that special assessment, in your opinion?
I should think how many relatives live in Chesterfield before I answer that. So what I'd say is, and this is what I recommend for as many years as I've worked in government. When you're looking at a budget, you don't look at just 1 year. You look multiple years out, because the trend, property taxes, as we know, are limited by how inflation, the lesser of inflation of 5%, unless you have some new construction and maybe there's potential for some on-capping on a special assessment. So you can predict revenue relatively well, subject to new construction, and so it's looking at the trend of your contracts. I mean, it's math, and so part of it is looking at the healthcare, the legacy costs are the big item, and where we're going to be, and how we want to address that. So I'd be reluctant. I think to sort of off the cuff say, oh, that'd be a great idea, or I think what's a good idea is looking out 3 to 5 years and saying, where's the trend? And I say this for water and sewer rates, because some years you have a really dry summer and the water fund does great, so it's like, wow, we'll never have to raise rates again. And then this summer, I don't think anybody's going to turn on a sprinkler this summer. And so we're going to have some revenue down tip in water and sewer, so we have to look over the recent history and where the trend is before we make a decision to extract revenue if that means our OPEB or pension won't be funded as well as it should be. We're not covering the costs that we know are coming, the CapEx that we need to have. So I think the right answer is let's project out in a reasonable fashion. We'll have some new healthcare numbers, and we'll put those in, and we'll see how the trend goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Lots and lots of analysis and long-term, short-term, all of it before any revenue or expenditures happen. I appreciate your audit, working with our team, and the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's just a receive and file. 4B is a presentation by Spalding DeDecker for the Pazer assessment of the township parking lots, and I believe they might need a minute or two to plug in. And Mr. O'Connor will maybe hang out at the podium to entertain us. Microphone, they won't be able to hear you at home.
We need you to use the microphone, and anyone else who speaks, they'll please use the microphone as well, because otherwise the recording will not pick it up. Thank you.
Good evening. At the March 19th, 2019 board meeting, the Township Board authorized Spalding DeDecker to prepare a parking lot pavement assessment of township-owned properties. So the assessment is done. Dave Richmond and Nancy Kalinsky are here from Spalding DeDecker to present the study. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Give him the microphone, deliver it.
Thank you. I'm Dave Richmond with Spalding DeDecker, and I got Nancy Kalinsky here. Nancy's going to start us off with the presentation, and then I'm going to finish it up.
Good evening. And in front of you, you have copies of the PowerPoint and our paving analysis report. Like Mitch said, we were hired to assess the pavement conditions of various township properties. So what we did, we went out to the sites and then we used standard assessment methods, and we were looking for deficiencies of the facilities. We were looking for holes, cracking, rutting, alligatoring, base failure, and on concrete we were also looking for ASR. ASR is alkali silica reaction. Essentially there's two chemicals that react together, form a gel, freeze thaw, and just break up the concrete. So what we did then, we evaluated we took all the information we had, and then we put it into a computer program, and we used PASER ratings, pavement surface evaluations and rating system. And now what that did was calculated a document overall condition index, or an OCI, of the pavement. And what we do, we take this OCI, and it allows us to compare apples and apples. Everything is done on the same basic way, so that nothing's skewed, so it's all relatively the same. And then we can take that information and establish a long-term management program. We can just see what we need to. We can have short-term fixes, long-term fixes, full repair. It gives us a way to plan. So the OCI gives us a range from 10 to 100, and 10 being the worst, and 100 being like a brand new road. Our goal is to have the township facilities in the 60 to 80 range, and that's a good quality of life, a good service life. And as you can see on this chart, what this chart tells us, in this critical range is the 60 to 80. For every dollar we spend maintaining and doing preventative maintenance in that 60 to 80 or above, extends the life. If we drop below this critical point, it takes us $8 to $10 as compared to the $1 to bring it back up to the desired 60 to 80 range. So we evaluated 8 properties: the Bay Harbor Pump Station, Brandenburg Park, Department of Public Works, Fire Station 1 and 3, Police Department, Pollard Park, and the Township Hall. Then we averaged the OCI. These facilities have an overall condition index of 48.78. And Dave will get into all the nitty-gritty of the technical part.
Thanks, Nancy. So what I'm going to walk through here briefly is the individual facilities, and just kind of talk a little bit about them. First up is Bay Harbor Pump Station. You see on our maps, what we typically do when we're out doing these assessments is we'll break the pavement up into certain areas. In this case, we had it broken up into 3 areas. We have our Area A, which is the parking and a drive. We have Area B, which is the fire truck exit. And then we have our approaches. In this case, Area A, we ended up with a OCI of 30. What is that telling us? Well, there's areas there that are going to be, you can see where they're crosshatched, where we're going to need to do full depth replacement, but we can also get by with doing partial depth. We can mill the surface and be able to come in and pave over that and extend the life of this property. Then in Area B, which is concrete, that is ASR. That pavement is going to need to be replaced. And then Area C is the approach. We have a fair condition on that. We do have some joints on this that need to be sealed up, and then there's also a section, a panel that needed to be replaced as well. But by sealing these joints, if we were to come in and seal these joints now, we're extending the lifespan of this pavement by avoiding the moisture getting down in there and causing the freeze and thaw issues. Next is Brandenburg Park. Brandenburg Park is in great shape, just recently paved, so there's really no issues there. The only real recommendations we had with I see a,
That's the boat ramp I think you're looking at. That's in the water, the boat ramp?
yeah, the boat ramp itself needs to have work done on it, but there's also, up here, it should be, Area B should have a 90 rating as well. It's in great shape too. The only real recommendation we have with Brandenburg Park is where you have catch basins and you have concrete collars. The recommendation is to go in and do some crack sealing around those to, again, prevent that moisture from coming in. You're going to extend the life of your pavement in that area. And as we say, the boat ramp itself is concrete, and it's in fair condition, and that's something that should be replaced, should be looked at being replaced. Next is the Department of Public Works. Again, the Public Works parking area, we came up with an overall condition index of 40. It had some cracking involved in some areas. You got some base failure in some areas where you see the cross hatching. Again, these are areas where we'd suggest to do full depth repair. The rest of the parking lot can be just milled with it and put a 2-inch cap on it, and you're going to extend your life of the parking lot and keep it as a very operable facility. In this with the Department of Public Works, probably the biggest issues that we've seen on this were the truck drive and the approach. Mostly the truck drive itself, where it needs to have some repairs done. We had some miscellaneous suggestions on this, is where there's catch basins, is actually coming in and putting in concrete collars around the catch basins to help prevent those from causing any issues there in the future. And then also you see there's the blue area up there. That's just reworking the handicap so that the ADA area, so that it becomes compliant with current ADA standards. Fire station number 1. Area A is the parking area. We have an overall condition index of 80. It's very good. All we recommend there is just doing some joint sealing on that parking lot. Area B, the asphalt drive, that's a OCI of 10. That's a complete replacement. And then the truck drive itself, again, it's concrete, it's subject to ASR, it needs to be completely replaced. And then there's some miscellaneous items is just sidewalk ramps at the drive approach. Fire station number 3, both the Area A parking and Area B truck drive, ASR, again, it's concrete. They're an OCI of 20. That's a total replacement in those areas as well. The truck drive is in decent shape. It just needs to have some joint sealing. And then the miscellaneous is ADA updates. Now the police department. We have an overall condition index of 30 on the east drive. The parking area, again, is a 30. And then the west drive approach is a 60. In reality, the whole parking lot needs to be completely replaced. And it should be also concrete curbs placed around this to bring it into compliance with standards. And the east drive approach needs to be replaced as well. There's several structures out here that are starting to sink that are going to need to be rehabbed and also put into place, some work done on it. So there's some extensive work to be done out here in the police department. Pollard Park, the north parking area, an OCI of 30. That is in poor condition. We're recommending full depth replacement of the north parking lot. The south parking lot is an OCI of 60. It's in fairly decent shape. It's considered good. We have cracking. The recommendation there is to go in and do some crack sealing and maybe some seal coating. And then Area C, the Park Drive, is a OCI of 20. That's a full replacement. And then the only other comment on this would be some miscellaneous would be to bring it into ADA compliance as well. Township Hall, Area A is the north parking lot. It has an overall condition rating of 30. Again, this is another one of the parking lots where we can get by with just doing some partial full depth replacement and then be able to do partial depth replacement where we're milling and replacing with a 2-inch cap. And then also adjusting some ADA on that area. Area B, the north parking area drive, is an OCI of 40. It's in a little bit better shape. We have, again, a partial depth replacement and then also a full depth replacement in one area. The loop drive, we're talking the same thing, again, is an OCI of 40, and it's the same procedure. A couple places where you need to have full depth replacement, but we can get through with doing a mill and replacement. Where you have the larger cracks, what we tend to do in these situations where we're milling, maybe you see a larger crack, there's a fix that we do where we come in and we clean the crack out and you fill it back up before you pave over it. That way you're preventing the reflective cracking. Senior parking lot, again, that's in great shape. That's an OCI of 80. All we recommend there is just doing some crack sealing on some of the concrete collars. And then the west parking lot is an OCI of 15. That's a complete reconstruct. So once we went through all these ratings, one of the things we put together is just some scenarios for you to consider. This is a tool that can be used for you to be able to look at future budgets or current budgets and how you may want to proceed with repairing your parking lots at your facilities. What you see up here is a graph, and the first thing I looked at is scenario 1, no work, which you'll see the black line just trending down to where in 10 years, your OCI, your overall condition index, is down to 15. The other scenario I looked at was doing $300,000 a year. $300,000 a year is the light blue line. That got us to an OCI of, I think it was around 59 is what it came up to be. But bear in mind that also, with that budget of $300,000 a year, it didn't cover completely all the repairs that we had suggested. So that actually leaves out having part of Pollard Park being repaired if you look at the $300,000 budget. The final scenario I looked at was a $450,000 annual budget, just to see where we ended up with. We ended up with a condition rating of 68. Overall condition rating is 68, which is good. That is a very good rating. And what that also did is it allowed all the pavements to be repaired. It also allowed for future maintenance so that you could continue to extend the life. Again, these were just some scenarios that I ran. There's many different options, many different things that can be looked at. This was just something I wanted to be able to show, give you guys an idea what options you may have out here. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
One quick comment from me. Dave, Nancy, the whole team at Spalding, and Mitch, thank you for the information and the detail. I would have really enjoyed having this, when I walked in the door, but the information like this is really going to allow us to make very good decisions moving forward. And there's some changes on there that are reflected. It's going to allow us to, those numbers change. For example, Veterans parking lot right behind here will be the first parking lot that's going to be replaced. Just this little piece in front of the War Memorial that was done funded partially through a state grant. Plans are done and it's already on its way through Spalding DeDecker. Same thing with the police department. So there's no, we're looking at bigger things long-term down the road for that police department. So we might not be looking at a concrete fix on that whole thing, which is a very, very large number. Looking at maybe the direction of that front changing and becoming a 50-year facility. Same thing with the biggest financial piece of this parking lot, which is out by the ball diamonds on the south side. There's going to be a whole lot of discussion here in the coming years of the location and home for a future rec center. And before we go and spend, and that number I think is upwards of $600,000 for that big piece because of the area, there might be some reconfigurations going on. But the information is vital, and I expect our team, DPW and Mr. O'Connor, to be back with some specific projects, for sure on the maintenance and crack sealing, and hopefully some other little projects so we can start chipping away at this problem. Any comments from the board? Yes. Trustee Joseph, then I'll head down here.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say I really am very impressed with the report. I was not a fan of spending the money on this report, and I'm very surprised pleasantly at the depth at which you laid out some arguments. The difficulty I have is that the OCI and the combined township OCI is something that you gather as a result of assessing all the things that you were asked to assess. So you can go into an individual parking lot and establish an OCI and then break it out into sections with different sections at different rates. And then you go to an entirely different site and you do the same thing there. What you can't do, and what you were not asked to do and I don't think could do, is make a decision about what the board prioritizes. You know, so it is a decision that the board uses this information and others. And the problem that I have is I can take no issue with the analytics. They're brilliant, and that you clearly know what you're doing. But I don't know that I would have spent $10,000 or whatever we spent here for a report on certifying water being wet or snow being cold. We know that some of these parking lots, when our police open house and we have a girl that falls in and she just disappears, you know, we know that that parking lot is a problem. We have at that point actionable information of which to do something with, but we go out and we get this report, and then you even went a step further and projected out 10-year plans based on set-asides, 300,000, 450,000, nothing. And so you gave us a lot of things. I'm just curious as to what our township does with them, because 2 years ago we spent money on a parking lot, $1.4 million or thereabouts, and I don't know that we followed the recommendations from that $1.4 million investment, specifically sealants, and to hear concrete collars being problematic 2 years after means we had data then, we didn't do anything with it. So if we do nothing but receive and file, and then we say, well, we like data, it's problematic for me. We have actionable data available to us. We have our engineering team, I think, that could have come back with some assessments, and then it becomes a board decision on what it is that we're actually going to do. I don't think we needed this to know areas that were real problems. And the other question, which Spalding DeDecker cannot answer, is which one is triage? What's the priority list? Do we prioritize by the amount of traffic and the potential liability with each one of our parking lot conditions? So when we have seniors traversing a parking lot that looks riddled with, you know, potholes, is that a greater priority than, say, another area in the township? And those are decisions that you cannot make with just an OCI rating. And again, no disrespect to you, I think you did a wonderful job on this report, and it exceeded my expectations. It just is that we had information prior that was actionable, and I'm a little disappointed, excuse me, a little disappointed that we're not taking more bold steps to address things that we know are problematic, and we're spending money on data.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board?
I'd like to thank Spalding for the report. It definitely opens up for my eyes on where we at with all the parking lots and what we can and can't do. I can't think, though, with the rehab of Fire Station number 1, not sure what Director Kirsten's going to be doing there when we get all our building plans, but I'm sure that's going to be one of his directives, something to do with the driveways and approaches for that. Thank you again for the information.
Trustee Bosberg.
Thank you. I too appreciate this report. It's a comprehensive report with all the data, all the numbers, the ranking, and I think it will be something that will be very useful for us as we go through our budgeting process. So thank you.
Treasurer Lafata. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe, no public comments on this piece of it. There'll be an opportunity at the end. There's no public comments on department reports. Okay, thanks, Joe. Treasurer Lafata.
When I look at your 10-year projection at 400,000 or 350,000 a year, and I look at one of these projects, when I look at the police department and I total up, we're looking at $1 million, so that kind of blew the first year's budget just doing that project. Then when I look at the township hall, there's another $1 million, so that blew that $300,000 budget. And to my understanding, when you go in and do pavement work, you pay for mobilization of all this equipment and everything else. So if you start paying for mobilization 2, 3, 4 times, you're basically tossing money out the window instead of having it all done at the same time. I appreciate the fact you're trying to stretch this out for 10 years, but I think at the end of 10 years, we're going to start and we're going to evolve and we're going to constantly always put $300,000 or $400,000 into pavement. That's what it looks like. It looks like a constant evolution. So I think finance-wise, the township's going to have to do something that's going to be a little bit more than $300,000 a year to make this work, because I think at $300,000 and some odd thousand based on these projects, it's just going to be a continuous expenditure for eternity.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you very much. This is, I think, an invaluable tool to have. Obviously, I agree with Trustee Joseph that this isn't the only thing to consider, but this is a very important piece of the puzzle, and I will agree that this also exceeded my expectations as well. I think that it's done in a way that anyone could look at it, whether it's a current board member, future board member, residents, taxpayers, will be able to take a look at this and be able to understand it. So thank you for putting it in layman's terms such that we can understand it with all the graphics and all the things that you included. How often do you recommend that this type of an assessment be done? What is best practices?
And this is a living document. So depending on what type of work is being done, I would recommend every 2 to 3 years you're going out and doing a quick assessment of it. Now, does the next assessment have to be as detailed as this? We've already done a lot of the initial assessments, so now it's just a matter of going back out, verifying what has been done, what may be the condition now. We already have a lot of this information already taken care of, so it's not quite as detailed of an effort moving forward. But it should be something that's done every 2 to 3 years. And again, it depends on how much construction you're actually doing, how much maintenance you're doing. And to your point, Mr. Joseph, is that it does have to be used. You do have to do your maintenance on this. And if you do your maintenance, if you follow through with the recommendations and do your maintenance, you can have a sustainable pavement program. And that's kind of what this is supposed to help with. We've done this with a lot of large national retail developments throughout the country. We're also now working with UPS and FedEx doing these same type of projects for them, where we're going in and evaluating their different facilities and providing them with the tools to be able to maintain their pavement throughout that period of time. And kind of looking at it from a standpoint of when I was doing these projections using the 300,000 and the 450,000, what I did is I looked at it and said, okay, some of these lower, it's more the higher overall condition indexes, but what it has is a smaller amount of money that needs to be put into it. I looked at doing a lot of those first, because what that does is then you're extending that pavement life out. And what happened is moving forward through this is maybe one year you put $450,000 in, but you only spent $350,000 of it. So that carried over to the next year. So then you ended up with $550,000, which then you could work on your larger projects. That's how I looked at it when I was going through and putting that graph together. That's just, and I do have that information, which I could definitely put together and get it to the board, because it may be helpful, you know, another tool that may be helpful in putting together a program.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? We are a bit divided up here on this, but I think overall you're going to see us unified in making smart investments in parking lots, and we'll have the decision if we repair them all. What I'll be pushing for is making really good decisions. For example, the parking lot by the baseball diamonds. Before we dump that number, $600,000-$700,000. Before you consider dumping that, I want to be absolutely certain that there's not going to be a rec center there, or the reconfiguration of this parcel, which is coming up on 30 years old. And same thing with some of the other parcels, which we may be getting rid of or changing for our growing population. There is another big piece of this that's a similar type study that I will be bringing to the board, either with a grant through SEMCOG, and that is a PASER study for all of our subdivision roads, every single road in Chesterfield that's subdivisions. Pacer study on that as well. Now, Macomb County does have an amazing tool, and they are doing studies on their primary roads. We have 150 miles of subdivision roads that they are not funding those Pacer studies, but SEMCOG is through grants, and I'm hoping next year that, that we get chosen for a grant, and we'll have all subdivision roads put together, and the outlook's going to be very bleak. We already know that. Just like to bring all these facilities up to snuff is maybe approaching $4 million. That number may be very astronomical. So prioritizing and trying to fix those is going to be very, very useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, department reports. Spent a little bit of time on the two presentations. Any departments wish to update the board on any issues within the township? Mr. Kirsten.
Real quick, you've received the Public Safety Department's 2018 annual report. Very proud that it's out. Just some highlights, if you don't mind, that I'd like to key in on. We finally achieved proper staffing in the fire department. You'll note on the initial pages. You've also provided me with the ability to properly fill these leadership positions, which enhances our accountability and to employees at all levels. You'll notice that our calls for service, both in the police and fire side, they are beginning to be reduced. What we're doing here is we're managing them a little bit closer, and what we're now changing in the fire service is we're refocusing our efforts on fire prevention, inspections, and public education. I'm very proud of our school liaison officer, Amanda DePate. She's also noted in here. Very thankful to Anchor-based schools and especially Superintendent Woodside. We have a great partnership with Anchor-based schools, and our liaison officer works directly with the teachers at all Anchor-based schools. Again, you'll see some of the new hires with the fire department, and again, our refocusing of our efforts in that fire department and their day-to-day duties. I'd like to also note our Friends of Chesterfield Police are for our Public Safety Open House, which is a highlight of the Public Safety Department. We've made significant financial investments in our fire service technology, again with the upgraded equipment and our medical first response equipment. And also, we will be bringing to the board shortly the Fire Station 1 renovation, which is near completion. Again, that's a 3,000 square foot expansion with additional bays. Very proud of the police department on the law enforcement side. Our crime trends are down. We've had a significant 5-year reduction in our Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. And in closing, the Public Safety Department, we're responsive. We want to be responsible. We want to be accountable, effective, and not only with this board, but with our citizens. And I thank this board specifically for the support that you've lended the police and fire department. And I hope this report meets and exceeds your expectations. Look forward to this again next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Any further department reports? Director Cottington.
Good evening. Just an update on the flooding situation, water levels, what have you. The water's still coming up. It's up probably 4 inches in the last week. We are starting to see a lot more roads that are getting covered by water. It's coming up through, whether it be private drains, through road basins, and such. I was able to quickly drive the lakefront today, this afternoon, and we have like 7 areas that we could probably help these roads out and try to get the water under control. I'm going to have to buy some more equipment to do that. I want the board's blessing on that. I wanted to let you know that the sand is going really fast now. Now that the water has got to the point it has, a lot of people are reacting and bagging. They're almost in a struggling mode now. But we're doing everything we can. We have 5 areas right now that we have plugged some of the water from coming in because of the safety hazards. And it's getting to the point, with your blessing, I'd like to keep going. It's starting to become a safety issue for police and fire vehicles to get down these roads and the residents. So with your blessing, I'll work with the residents on these roads and try and get these plugged off that we can. The only thing that comes with plugging these off is you have to pump them when it rains after that. So whether our manpower, sometimes we can use the people on the streets that are willing to help us out. That's already worked in a couple situations. They're more than grateful that we're coming out and helping them. So I just wanted to give an update on that. Any questions?
If anyone has any objections, maybe we could use our purchasing policy, the emergency chunk of this, until you get a grasp on. I believe you're talking about sewer plugs, which are inflatable plugs, different sizes, that will stop the backflow of water in from Lake St. Clair, maybe some 2-inch pumps or different size pumps and hoses, electric pumps.
Right.
All of which, all that stuff will be able to be used in our DPW. It's just what we have on, what we already have is already being utilized.
Right.
So if nobody has an objection, we do have an emergency chunk of our purchasing department, because I don't think you're ready to bring details of how many pumps you're looking at, how many hoses and how many plugs with a number. We could run through the 3 full times and then bring it to the next board meeting if necessary. Does anyone have any objection to that?
No objection.
Okay. Any questions for JR?
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you.
If some of the situations do get worse, I will like to come back and talk to the 3 full-timers. We don't want to keep creating dangerous situations where people can't get in and out, especially police and fire. Thank you.
If an emergency meeting with the 3 full-timers does take place, could we, the part-time board members, at least get an email sort of letting us know what the outcome of the, the ask and the response?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Assistant Director Johnson.
Good evening, Board. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this Saturday at Brandenburg Park, there's going to be a boat washing event that's sponsored by the Clinton River Watershed Council and Michigan State University. MSU is bringing a mobile boat washing unit to the park to educate boaters on making sure proper washing habits to keep from tracking other invasives around other waters and things like that. So that'll be from noon to 5 on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further department reports? Item 6 is a consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda or considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda are permitted. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with one amendment, and that is the approval of the agenda. I'd ask that we move agenda item G to agenda item A.
Support.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with moving agenda item G, which is, the Green for Life discussion. You want to move that to the top?
Yes. I noticed that the GFL representatives are here, and I believe a number of residents are probably here and anxious to talk with them. So.
Discussion. My initial thoughts are that one may take a bit of time, and I don't think anything else on this agenda is going to take as much time. So my thoughts are I'd like to see it stay where it is, because I think we'll be to it very, very shortly, and I think that's going to be the longest item.
Again, I think just as a response, I think there's a good chunk of residents who are here, and my inclination is to try to allow them an opportunity to talk before we get into the rest, but I understand your point.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson to approve the consent agenda with the amendment of moving item 7G to the top of the table. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion prevails. 7G.
Correct.
Item 7G. We could maybe dim the light. I'm going to have a little presentation. Discussion, item 7G, discussion regarding service concerns in the current contract with Chesterfield Township Single Waste Hauler Vendor, Green for Life. I will make a motion to discuss the item.
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Trustee Domingue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay. We are open for discussion. How are we doing with the projector? Oh, here we go. We'll give it a couple minutes and I'll just go on without it. All right, let's just... Okay, quick, I wanted to give a quick presentation, very quick. The PowerPoint I have on trash, which was started pretty much when I walked in the door with the different ideas and potential service improvements and the steps along the way, is way too long for this. But I wanted to give you a quick rundown on the history. In 2005, our township, just like most other municipalities around southeast Michigan, chose to move to a single waste hauler contract. The reasons for this at the time was to limit the amount of trash trucks, compost trucks, and recycling trucks from 4 or 5 different vendors, that could be 12 or 15 trucks, down to 3. Most other communities in southeast Michigan did this, at which time bids were out. The contract went out to bid. Rizzo Environmental was the low vendor at that time. This is in 2005, almost 15 years ago. There were 3 extensions, one in 2008, 2011, 2014, all of which were extending the existing Rizzo Environmental contract. We did have, Rizzo got sold to the new Green for Life in 2016, and then we ran through the process of rebidding out this vendor. I wasn't super happy about another extension for obvious reasons, so hence we went through a very extensive bid process in 2018. The goal of this process was to procure a single waste hauler firm that's going to provide the best value to our customers and residents with the competitive prices and exceptional customer service. We had a team, a qualification-based selection team put together to do this. We looked at a number of things, and if you go to the website, you'll see every action item broken out. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, but there's a ton of information in there, from old contracts to every question that was asked to the different folks. But our biggest things were cost to customers, customer service, and container options, and what we could do there. Cost, service, containers. We had 3 bids, and those 3 bids were advanced disposal, waste management, and Green for Life. We had numerous options in the proposal, along with voluntary alternatives, which are, again, all available online, for finding the right fit. 2 quotes that were responsive in any way, shape, or form that could meet us was Green for Life and waste management, and those were the difference in cost to the quotes. It is important to note as well that waste management's proposal didn't quite fit our model. There was a whole lot of, our township is very accustomed to if you bring it to the curb, they'll take it. no limits on the amount of bags and no limits on the amount of cans and on the amount of compost and those type of things. The model changed with waste management, and there were limits on the, it fits in a 96-gallon container, that's what they take. And if there's another container required, then there's an extra charge on that. That was not compatible with our, the team didn't feel like that was compatible. Our cost to our residents is the blue line. Our cost to the residents under the new GFL proposal, which was an increase under the new contract, and the other responsive bid is shown there in the green. So now we're looking at, real quick, there's 3 different areas generally that this vendor provides. Mixed waste, what I'll call mixed waste, which is standard trash. Our current service levels, multiple bags, multiple cans. They have an optional cart program right now for the 96-gallon with a bar mechanical cart. Carts not to exceed 35 gallons or 60 pounds. That's pretty much been status quo since. The second thing is recycling, which I'm going to get to. And the third is yard waste and compost, and I have a sheet on that. Mixed waste containers, again, we have no limit within reason. You jump into the bulk situation, cans up to 35 pounds, up to 65 pounds in weight. Some of the potential asks, what you're going to see here is a green can with a logo on it. Some of the asks that we're working on is trying to find a way to provide Chesterfield Township residents with one of those. Every resident, whether it's phased in or starting with it, 196-gallon can, or 64 depending on where they are. The concept is this will solve 90% of the problems 90% of the time, and also improve curb appeal. Recycling is very challenged. Anyone who's going out for bids on their waste and trash, and I'm sure our GFL representatives will touch on this. Recycling markets are challenged, hence the cost is very difficult, and we're very bad at recycling as a state and in this region. We don't, our stream is so dirty that a lot of times, even though it is intended to be recycled, it ends up in a landfill anyway. So finding a way to make this better is in the mix as well. I'm not really asking right now, although we're looking at everything, for recycling containers, and the reason being is we have applied through the state of Michigan for a grant to potentially help with some uniform containers. The last area is compost, which has been the issue this spring, a lot of the complaints this spring. And I'm sure GFL is going to, the GFL representatives are going to touch on that with the amount of rain, snow. This sheet, which is available in our office and online, discusses our current standards and what's picked up with compost, how things need to be wrapped and how things need to be done. The ask here is to that same green container, but brown, with a Chesterfield logo. I'm looking to get those standard throughout our community. I believe that's going to solve 90% of our problem 90% of the time. And these are just discussion items. There's a cost to those with every resident and everything else that comes across. So the goal was to procure the best single value or single waste hauling firm at the most competitive price with the best customer service. We're looking at some cost savings that could potentially come through this as we're looking to constantly improve this service. One is billing. There's a tremendous amount of money that could be saved on an annual basis without customers writing checks individually, when we have a mechanism in town in water bills and tax bills where we're already contacting with each and every one of those residents. That could be a savings to this service, along with trying to find a way to improve recycling. My gut is this is going to need a larger solution from the state level or a regional level, and uniform containers. I believe very strongly in containers. I think the curb appeal is going to be much nicer for our community. I think it will help with varmints if we do have them here. We don't have much of a problem there. It'll help with the weathering, getting to the recycling and the trash that are in bags. It'll help with the blown trash that ends up in our waterways. So that's some of the direction that we're looking at. And with that, maybe I'll bring up GFL to do a little presentation, maybe make some open statements, and then I'll bring it up to the board and the public.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Munum. I am the Director of Government Affairs and Public Relations for GFL Environmental USA. Do you need our address?
No.
No, you know.
I think we know what to find.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board and the residents this evening about the situation. Particularly the situation that we had a couple weeks ago when a lot of people were upset about missed pickups, particularly of yard waste. We heard about it from the residents. We heard about it from various members of this board. I myself spoke with Trustee Vosberg, Supervisor Acciavatti, and Supervisor Joseph about this very item. I don't come here tonight offering any excuses because you have contracted with our firm to provide a service, and we are obligated and want to provide that service with excellence to make sure that all of the residents are satisfied. But I will offer some explanations. As your auditor pointed out earlier about water bills, that sometimes your people are using a lot of water to water their grass and they doubt you're going to have that this summer. This is part of the problem that we're having, not just in Chesterfield Township, but throughout the region. This amount of rainfall that we've had in the past month has hit this entire region in terms of being able to pick up yard waste in a rather significant way. When it rains several days and then the sun comes out, grass explodes as far just in its growth. We had the same phenomena last year, as I'm sure many of you remember. When it comes to picking up all that yard waste, we don't always have, Mr. Acciavatti, you pointed this out in your presentation, that you were looking for the no limits on bags when you put your contract out just recently for bid. Well, we always try to get everything that comes to the curb. However, when it comes to yard waste, when you start having 30 bags of waste, and that's not at all an exaggeration, you'll have some households that have none because they mulch, and then you'll have some with 30 brown craft bags. This puts a significant strain on our ability to pick things up. And that strain is not just here in Chesterfield Township, it's throughout the entire region. So, we had a lot of contacts at our customer service. You had contacts, I know that you did. I'm happy to report that those requests for customer service is down significantly since we last addressed this 2 weeks ago by your last board meeting, down over 70%. And we are doing a much better job of getting out and getting everything picked up. But, we felt that it's important that we come here tonight and listen. I'm here. We also have with us tonight Sam Langer, who is our Director of New Business Development. So we sent 2 of our senior management team. I know that the township had been talking with our previous district manager, who's no longer with the company for a personal reason, but that also has necessitated us to make some management changes. And when we have the opportunity to make that management change, we're going to make it with improving service in mind, of getting new trucks, of hiring new drivers, new loaders. And we are empowered, if there is any future problems, to call people up and say, we need to put more trucks on the system. I'm sure Mr. Langer will reinforce what I have to say, but predominantly we're here this evening so that we can listen to what concerns you have, answer any questions that we can answer tonight, and if we can't answer them tonight, we'll make a point of getting back and answering them by tomorrow. So again, thank you for your patience, and we look forward to working with you to continue to improve our service. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Sam Langer. Good evening, residents. Sam Langer, I'm the Director of Business Development for GFL Michigan. We're both based out of our corporate office in Southfield. The purpose for me being here tonight was to try and answer any questions that you have, address any concerns that you have. I might not have the answers tonight, but I assure you that I will get them. And to personally meet you and offer you my business card with my personal cell phone number, that if you have issues in the future, you can reach out to me directly. We do have a customer service department that has extended hours, but I wanted to come here tonight, meet anybody that wants to meet me, give you my personal cell phone number, my personal email address, so we can address any concerns that you have. But what Joe said about the rate...
Thank you. Sam, if you could, and this is going to go for everyone, try to address your comments to the board and,
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
And then afterwards, if someone did want to speak with you and not during this official public meeting, you can address them one-on-one.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. And actually, my comments are done. I just wanted to reiterate what Joe said with respect to the...
I guess it was Joe, not a resident.
With respect to the rainfall, it has created a situation where it's generated a tremendous amount more compost than we anticipated, but we have adjusted the trucks. We have adjusted hiring additional drivers and training these drivers to address this issue. So with that, I'll yield to the board, and thank you very much for your time.
Just one more thing. We did have a significant number of residents, not just from Chesterfield Township, who tried to contact us with customer service issues. And one of the issues that we had through that is when you have that many calls at once, there starts to become significant wait times. One thing that I want to emphasize tonight to the board and to residents who may be watching this meeting is that if they want to jump to the front of the line with their service issues, avoid calling us altogether, though you're welcome to do so. But if you want to avoid the wait times, go to our website, which is gflusa.com, and you can put your customer service request directly in there, and it goes right into our system, right to our supervisors. So basically, it's almost the same system that our customer service agents are filling out when they're taking your calls, but you can put it out and then you're not waiting. So I think it's important that people know that that's available to them as a way to reduce waiting on phones.
Thank you. The board, I don't know if we want to bring it up here first, or should I bring it up to the audience? If someone wants to speak now, they can, audience, and then back up to us. Trustee Joseph.
So there's a couple things. One, the presentation, Mr. Supervisor, I understand in terms of way of reference, bringing people up to speed on how we got here, but at the end of the day, the problem that I have, and I'll reserve comments for, I want to hear from the residents. 2 weeks ago, we brought this to the board. Mr. Munham contacted me. I spoke to him on my way to the board meeting 2 weeks ago. And he said, I'd like to come in and talk to your residents and to your board and explain what we have going on. I've always known Joe to be a man of his word. I've had a number of conversations with Joe. And Mr. Munham, I'll be honest with you. Our township was accustomed to, it goes out to the street and it's picked up. And it didn't matter if it was 30 bags, an old couch, a refrigerator. We had service that, really was very responsive in most instances. And the overall feedback, without reading, lists and lists of names of residents that have posted or emailed me, it's a consistent problem. A lot of it goes back to the contract that we're in now, specifically as it relates to containers, which requires some more discussion. I don't agree that 90% of the problems would be solved 90% of the time with the containers, because there really hasn't been a massive amount of complaints with regard to the mixed household waste. It centers around the compost. That's where the bulk of our problems come in. It is on the compost. And when you were awarded the contract, I thought the bid process, we painted ourselves into a corner with the way that we structured the bids, and then we only got waste management really and you. The ask on the bids were there was no way we were going to get satisfactory service without an increase in cost. We were so attentive to the cost that we allowed a contract to go forward where we have the problems that we have now. I think a real conversation about recycling, it's not a recycling challenged, yeah, there's some education that could go on, but in the recycling business, a third of our bill is recycling, and we're not even doing it well. A lot of it is just ending up as trash. We're spending a lot of money and wasting a lot of your resources, and we're paying for it. Our residents are paying for it. That's a problem. That was a problem, hopefully, that we can work out in continued negotiations as we discuss some of these other things. The challenge that I see now is the faith in the service. So any resident that I would go to and say, we're going to sit down with GFL, renegotiate the contract, you go, but there's been a problem with honoring the existing contract, and that's the area that I'm hoping you can address relatively quickly. It centers around customer service, and it centers around a lack of response. We have residents who have consistent themes with regard to broken cans, weighted cans. If the can isn't in a GFL receptacle, that can is very likely to be destroyed on the road. That's the general feedback. If you're using a heavy-duty can that you bought from Lowe's, it doesn't match up very well to your equipment. It's difficult for your people, and they get destroyed very quickly. And that is it happens with such abundance that you look at how we're contractually related here. You know, what is the best fit for GFL to service our residents? Is it cans? Is it bags? Is it, what? And then talk money. I've had zero problem being very frank and blunt with you, and you were very, blunt on the back end. This costs, and this is how our system is set up. This is what we can reasonably accommodate. But if we're being real, you can't accommodate a contract that has put out 30 bags and will deliver it timely. Yet that's where we're at. Contractually, that's where we're at. There's no way you can do that. There's absolutely, from what I've investigated and heard in other communities, you're one rainfall away, one heavy grass growing season from the wheels coming off, and you're all over in different communities talking about this same thing. There's a fundamental problem here with the existing contract. There are some areas specifically that I'd like to ask you about in the contract, and one of them has to do with the article in the contract that deals specifically with customer service. It's Article 15. By contract, we're afforded a full-time field supervisor. The township shall have access to the field supervisor's cell phone and the email address for communication purposes. I'd like to know who that is or who it will be if there's not one in place. Contractually, that individual is supposed to be in the township routinely ensuring that pickups are made. Additionally, GFL shall provide at least one full-time customer service representative in the office during all hours of operation to receive and address complaints and receive orders for special pickup service. The third one is the one that I'm most interested in because I don't like being the receiver of the complaints. I signed up to be a trustee and I'll do it because that's what I said I'd do. But residents that respond, the Facebook post that I made had over 10,000 responses or hits, if you will. And a lot of those comments and complaints had to do with something that should be captured contractually in your office, and that is a log. Address complaints by the end of each business day with a maximum time limit of 24 hours from the receipt of the complaint. Further, that a written monthly report shall be supplied by GFL to the township or be made accessible via computer or electronic format, email, internet, and that includes all complaints and the disposition or the resolution action. To my knowledge, I have seen none of that. I know that the supervisor's office had a fairly strong working relationship with Mr. Dumas, who's no longer with your organization, but I think all of the board members should be aware of who the contractually afforded person is at GFL to register the complaint. And the last thing I'll say before I hear from the residents is, Mr. Supervisor, the idea of customers individually writing checks, being problematic, and there is a way to streamline that, but the problem becomes right now residents are saying, I have no recourse. There's no recourse. I've heard from a number of residents who were sort of operating under that previous contract where they pay the bill a year in advance and receive a 1-month reduction. That was no longer made available in the existing contract. So you have residents out there who paid for the entire 2019 contract, and they're feeling like they have no recourse now. They can't stop payment on a check, and if they do, Treasurer LaFata is contractually obligated to potentially add that to the tax roll. So, you know, at some point, the issue becomes a performance breach, a failure to perform. And, you know, I'd really like to know what we're going to do to address these customer service issues while we work towards the longer fix of cans, limits, things like that. So customer service for me is the biggest issue.
Any further comments from the board? I think we'll have an opportunity to bring it back up here. One very good positive thing here is we've got complete board involvement with this, and I think now we're going to be able to really nail down some things and get it better. Let's open up to the public. Step on up.
I'm back. Joe Kadich, live on Sutton. I started having a problem, not with the delivery service or anything like that, I think a month ago, and I brought it up during one of the meetings, and that started with the size of the containers. I've had containers that were 42-gallon containers I've had for probably 8-10 years, and suddenly they wouldn't pick them up. Started slapping stickers on it saying not in accordance to the township ordinance. Now, I want to know how we can give a contract out to somebody that had a contract that inherited the business or took over the business from Rizzo and then picked up the same workload, and suddenly 6 months after their 5 or 6 months after they started, changed their mind as to what kind of containers are going to go. And they did it based on your ordinance. Now, nobody said anything about this when that contract was let. There's a lot of people out there that had these size containers. What I ended up doing for a while is taking the container out to the road just before they come and going out there, taking all my white garbage bags and throwing them on the street, bringing the container. They were perfectly happy to pick up the bags off the street. Didn't make a lot of sense, but we did that. I finally got tired of it and had one of those containers delivered. So now I've got a lot of containers around, one that I don't even want. I'd rather have my old ones. But that was something that was negligible on your part and also on this company's part. I don't see how you can take a contract.
If I could, make sure you address the board and not anyone in the audience. If I could, real quick with this one, and maybe we'll let GFL come up in between the comments. The ordinance, because I would like GFL to speak to the size and weight limit of bags. After our meeting a couple weeks ago, the tagging of bags stopped unless if it was excessive. The ordinance for size and weight of containers has been on the Chesterfield Township book since 2005.
I know that, but all I'm saying is how they could do business. Go ahead.
So it's been on the books since 2005. This contract didn't create that, and this board didn't create that. Now, we didn't change it, and I would like GFL at some point to discuss the standards on that for non-mechanically lifted containers. Why there's weight limits and size limits after you're done.
The thing to have done at that point was go back and change the ordinance and say we accept 42-gallon cans, and then they've got it. You know, nobody put in there in that contract that you couldn't have 42-gallon cans. Like, all I'm saying is they did business with us for 3.5 years or 2.5 years, and all of a sudden, these cans are no good.
Thank you.
I got some more to talk about. The other stuff about the recycling or the yard waste, I can see where they have a problem with it. But I think part of the problem, from what I could see on my street anyway, stemmed from the fact that you decided you weren't going to come out and chip the tree limbs and everything that everybody would toss out. So on top of the grass that was growing, I saw people on my street that were taking tree limbs that if your chipper would normally come around, they'd be chipped and they'd be taken care of. So you had some contribution to do with that. I agree. Basically, everybody should have the telephone number of whoever the supervisor is on the road, so that on that day, if you got a problem, you can call him. Trying to get through that office was ridiculous. You hear elevator music for 20 minutes and finally give up. On the recycling, from what I understand, you might as well give up on the recycling anyway. All the countries, mainly Malaysia, China, all of those Oriental countries have cut off taking plastic waste from the United States. They're not taking it anymore. These guys are getting stuck with it, mainly because none of it was separated when recycled. We used to separate it. There was a number on the plastic. One would be polyethylene, polypropylene. It was all separated. Now it was all mixed together. And so they were buying it on the assumption that they would get it that way and they could use it. There's no market for it anymore. They're sending it all back to us. So on the recycling, I think it's on a bigger scale than you can control. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Public comments, and maybe at the end, I'm sure GFL will represent.
Bill Valencourt, I live on Maurice. We're one of the residents that pay our bill in full, and we have no repercussion on this at all. I run a rather large business, and if I did this to my customers, I'd be fired instantly. We have no repercussion. You guys stuck us with one contractor, and we have no way of taking care of our problem. And if we don't pay the bill, it just gets added to our taxes. Now, last week, I watched their trash pickup take the recycling bin and just dump it in the trash. So there's no recycling going on at all, so I should not be paying for recycling. That's number one. I've been using Rizzo garbage cans, because we purchased Rizzo garbage cans, and they still don't pick them up. We have to call time and time again to get them picked up. Compost, we use a 96-gallon. We use the other garbage cans for the appropriate trash. They need a serious action plan to make sure we're going to get the proper customer service, or their contract should be voided.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Greg Smith, 25030 21 Mile Road. My problem with GFL is they probably pick up my trash half the time, which means I have to call, go online. It takes anywhere from a couple days to, it's been as long as 2 weeks for them to come out and pick up trash that they missed. I don't know if they just drive down the street, drive right past my house or what. And there's no recourse. You can't have anyone call you back to figure something out. It's just ludicrous.
Thank you, Craig. That gentleman in the, a card from that gentleman in the brown coat might help you.
Hi, how are you? I'll make this quick. I'm right off 23 in Foster. I think I'm one of the few people who's actually managed to wait through the hold times on the phone and get to a supervisor. I've averaged about 45 minutes on hold, and this has been a series of a 3-week process in our sub. We're at a point where even if we do get a supervisor, they're flat out lying to us. We're being told the yard waste pickups the next day, the following week. I've gotten a supervisor on the phone who's called and said that they've passed our street and everybody was out of compliance with the branches. I challenged them on that. I have cameras in front of my house. I let them know right away. I watched the cameras. A yard waste truck never came by on our street for 2 weeks in a row. This is week 3 on our street where they finally came out. We had to chase down the yard waste trucks to get them to even take branches at all. And we loaded the branches ourselves onto their truck. They were not willing to do anything. I've spoken with a supervisor multiple times at this point, and we're just getting broken promises, lies. I've documented by email as well to make sure that this isn't a one-time thing, and we're getting nowhere. On top of the fact that in the last 2 months, our streets coincidentally lit up with multiple green containers after everybody's container's been broken. It's not happening by chance, it's happening consistently. You know, if there was a bid made by your company at a certain price and the price is increased, then it is on your company to maintain that service agreement. It's not on us. We shouldn't have to pay you more money when the rate's already increased and we're not getting the service. If a contractor came to my house who bid to do some work on my house and they failed to show up multiple weeks in a row, and then they failed to do what they were promised to do, I'm definitely not giving them more money, and I'd want my money back to begin with.
Could you state your name again?
Alexander Schickman, Shikhman.
Thank you.
Do we still sign in?
No, we know we have your address on file, Mr. Miller.
I'll wait till after this line up, Sheriff. Who do I give the money to? That's a good question. That person sitting right here came in my house and said Rezo Contractor, with a contract that had been lawfully obtained by this board, wanted a raise of $1. And she saved me 50 cents because they kept it down to 50 cents less than he wanted on his raise. Now, there was 2 or 3 times that this contract was raised and raised and raised, and I paid and paid and paid. Then all of a sudden, they sold the contract to somebody. Are you GFL? And they come by and they pick up my trash and they send me a bill and I'll send them a check. But I'm still paying that 50 cent difference. It's all in the bid. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been here 50 years when we had a dump and there was a few of us and we didn't have an expensive contract. I'm one of them old $10,000 a year sergeants that went to war for you people sitting here tonight and came home and got lucky. I had a $12,000 house and I didn't have enough money to have no trash in my old days. But once a month we'd go down to the dump. Now this is a serious situation when these people take money from a contractor, put up a sign and get their name elected to a public office, and then come down here and hold a meeting in my presence and say, Joe Miller, pay this contractor 50 cents more a month. Because he gave me a, campaign donation. A lousy $200 campaign donation. And now I'm paying 50 cents. Ladies and gentlemen, give me about 5 or 6 dumpsters, set them on that 1 acre of grass that I cut this week, and I'll come by and help you take it to my house, and then you can come pick up the dumpsters. 1 day a month. I'll lose the dumpster a week, and I'll get something to keep the odor down. But I'm glad you had this discussion tonight. And I'm glad that you told me that you sent the money back. You didn't take his campaign donation. Well, I'm going to get on out of here because I can't hear what you're saying no how. I'm obnoxious, and I'm 88 years old, and so I'm not going to go to Jacksonville. I'll tell you that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
That's a good joke between the two of us. Next time I'll tell all you people about the going to Jackson and letting the war happen.
Thank you, Joe. Any further
clean up your act if you've got one. And sir, I'd like to have a conference with you. I'll come by your office and praise you for the good job you've done. And I give you the troops, I give you the notice from searchlight.
Hi, thank you. Lou Littleton.
Luke, okay.
From Stonehenge subdivision. I've got basically a couple of questions that was mentioned earlier in this gentleman's presentation. He had mentioned that they saw this coming last year with the rainfall that we had last year. What steps did they put in place to prevent what happened this year from happening last year? He did not address that at all, and I'd like to hear what his answer is. And the other question I have is for the trustees, is what is in the contract to penalize them for not following the contract? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Mr. Munum, if you'd like to address some of those.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just go in order here. In terms of the size of the containers, it's true, it has been in your ordinance for a very long time. The previous vendor, Rizzo, made a point of, if it came down to the curb, we're going to pick it up, and I don't know if they necessarily adhered to all those terms. I mean, GFL, it does do things, in a little bit more, little more orderly fashion, insofar that we do have concerns about our employees and, just their safety, that things are, that don't weigh that, too much, that they're going to be injured. So, and again, Mr. Acciavatti, as you talk about wanting to put in cans for that are standardized, a lot of communities have that, and that helps. Having those same cans at every house allows us to pick this stuff up more efficiently and more safely. In terms of recycling, yes, there is not just a problem here or in Michigan or in the United States or in North America. There is a worldwide issue with recycling. And yes, much of the items that are being put out for recycling wind up in a landfill because for various reasons. As the gentleman pointed out, in China implemented a program called National Sword, where they were taking our materials at a rate of about 20% contamination, and one morning, almost just like that, one morning, decided that that rate of contamination was going to be, the acceptable level was 0.5%. Well, that's a significant drop, and it's something that the world market simply have continued to be unable to deal with. And when you look at many of the items that people mix together in recycling and the rate of contamination, we can do a better job of educating. And I've had this conversation with members of this board and other government bodies. We have a full-time recycling educator on staff at GFL that goes around to all the any school that will let her come in, because we have found that if you go and address things with children, they're going to get on their parents to make sure that they get things straight. She averages about 30,000 kids a year throughout the Metro Detroit area. But we need to make sure that whatever the acceptable items that we contract for, that they're clean, that containers are rinsed out, because like a laundry detergent container, that's good plastic, it's recyclable, but it needs to be rinsed out. If someone takes the lid off and puts it in, and about 1/8 of the liquid drips on everything underneath, guess what? None of that stuff is recyclable anymore. It is all junk. It's contaminated, it's going to a landfill. So this is something where we need to partner with you to make sure that there's better education, that people, and people also throw away stuff that was never meant to be recycled. And that's something that we need to stop. I mean, they do it with the best of intentions, but still, it's contaminating the loads. So this isn't something that we are, that we've made some arbitrary decisions. We're doing this because this is just simply how things are, how the market is presenting itself right now. And I mean, we've gone so far into taking recycling, sorting in-house, because our rates going outside has just have just blown up. And this is across the entire industry. Now, in terms of recycling and garbage trucks, we don't permit our employees to throw out recyclables as, with municipal solid waste. You clearly are contracting to have recyclables picked up separately. If that were to happen, there'd be some severe consequences for that employee. Many times, the trucks that we utilize to pick up recyclables resemble or look exactly like the truck that is out to pick up solid waste. Sometimes residents see that and make that assumption. In some communities, and I'm not sure if we do it in this community, we have trucks that have two compartments, one for trash, one for recyclables. And that's usually for very small, narrow routes. I'm not sure if we do that here. I don't know, because maybe in some of these subdivisions with the canals, that's a situation that we'd have. But if you see that, get a truck number and let us know. We will deal with that. Mr. Smith on 21 Mile Road, please contact myself or Sam. If we're not picking up your trash or only picking up half the time, then that's an issue and we will deal with it. That's why we're here this evening. In terms of the yard waste, again, this has to do with tree limbs in particular. We need some sort of standardization, and that is listed in the contract, that there are bundles that are tied off, and I believe they're 4 feet, and there's a certain diameter for the branches. I don't have that in front of me right now, but we do have that, and that's pretty standard throughout the industry. So, and if there is an issue, we will get back to, we will address that issue as it comes up. Mr. Miller, you point out about campaign contributions, and whereas some waste haulers have made that, GFL has a policy of not doing that, and GFL does not have a PAC, so we don't participate in any political campaign contributions. I'm sorry, the gentleman from Stonehenge Sub, it's like he wanted to know from last year, recycling, what steps did we put in place? We hired more drivers. We tried to bring in more trucks. Another issue that confronts us and confronts everybody in the logistical field, anybody in the trucking industry, is that there is a national shortage of commercial truck drivers. We are constantly advertising for new truck drivers. In fact, if you know anybody who has a CDL with an air brake endorsement, have them call me. We aggressively look for those individuals. We want them on board. We are bringing new trucks online, and again, we can see this coming every year. We know that there's going to be an explosion of grass cuttings in May, but if there's a lot of rain, it exceeds not just, again, it's everybody. Every vendor. You're not going to find another vendor who's going to be able to address this very limited increase, this massive increase. It's just hard to do. And again, it's not everybody's putting 30 bags of yard waste out. At my house, I don't put anything out because we mulch. Now that requires us to go out and cut the lawn more frequently, but that's not being generated. But there are some residents who want all those clippings picked up, and it comes out to 30 bags. Now, in terms of our customer service, we do have customer service agents who service this community. Again, I do understand that the wait times have been very long, and that's one reason why my recommendation to you would be go to gflusa.com and do this online, because that will, and you will get a service number, so if you do call afterwards or have any other contact, you reference that service number. And we do have a supervisor dedicated to your community. His name is Jason. I can't think of his last name right now, but he does have the contact information and does work with the supervisor's office. We generally in our contracts make sure that we have one point of contact within the local units of government. But he is available. He does contact the township. We do maintain records. We have logs of service complaints. I mean, I actually were looking at the summaries before I came here this evening. That's how I know that our overall customer service requests are down 70% from what they were 2 weeks ago. And all that information, is available to township officials per the contract. So I hope I answered the majority of these concerns. I mean, some of these issues we need to sit down and continue to work with the township officials to resolve. I mean, again, I don't come here tonight offering any excuses. I just want to make sure that we hear what's going on and that I offer a few explanations.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Meadham. I'll bring it back up.
Thank you.
Board. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I was part of the group that went through these.
Hold on 1 second. I think we have another call.
Hi, my name is Lynn Huzarski. I live at 46829 Nursery Street here in Chesterfield. It's a dead end, 6 houses, and every time they come and pick up my garbage, at the end of the street, there's always a big pile left. It doesn't matter, if it's regular trash, recycled trash, there's just a pile left at the end of the street. When I call them and ask them to come pick up our recyclables, I have 2 garbage cans, tops, for recycled grass. And they're the cans that they gave us because they busted our cans. I think that was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was last year. But they're labeled, we live at the end of the street.
Hold on. It's not going to pick up. You have to come up to the microphone.
This is my husband, Paul.
Okay, one at a time.
Yeah, we live on the end of Nursery Street, and we're the only ones on that street that recycle. Every week she has to call because they never pick it up. So we always have to go back and forth. We're having a hard time cutting our grass because, our bins are full. They never come and pick it up. And if they do come and pick it up after she complains so many times, finally they come and pick it up, and then next week we're doing it again. They regularly don't come and get our recyclables. They'll come and get our garbage, every week, but the recyclable cut grass, and it's not like, we have unlabeled bins, or we have it piled on the side, or it's wood or anything like that. It's just cut grass, and they never pick it up. We have to complain every week to have them come and get it. That's my complaint. And part of the reasons we live on Nursery Street, so they forget about our street, because there's only 6 houses on the street, and we're at the very end. So that's all I got to say.
They've even asked us when we set out our garbage to please set out the recycle bins first and garbage after, so when they drive down 21, they could see the compost out there in order for them to stop. Otherwise, they will not stop.
Well, it sounds like you got the information in the right people's hands now.
I hope so.
So do I.
Yes.
Any further comments from the public?
Hi, Deborah Gaynor, 49494 Maurice. Just a couple of comments, just listening to everybody talk. They talk about people with, the yard waste and everything, 30 bags out there. I'm in the Stonehenge subdivision, and I can tell you, I do not see every week every household with 30 bags. Quite often, the majority of the households have none or 1. So if you have one house with 30 bags and you have 15 houses with 0, I think it kind of evens out. So I don't see that. As far as recycling, we're not here to solve a global problem. It is a global problem. But if we're not going to be recycling, then we shouldn't have to pay for recycling. And by the way, I rinse out every single solitary thing that goes in my recycling bin. So people are doing that. I know that there are streets being, I don't know if you can really say accidentally missed. How can you have all these trucks going through an entire neighborhood and just have little spots or little parts of streets that aren't being picked up? How can you miss that? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And lastly, I'm not going to buy a bin, because I have about this much garbage a week, and I have 2 bins of recycle. I'm not going to take a year to fill up a 96-gallon bin or something of garbage. I'm not purchasing one. If you guys want to pay for one and give it to me, I'll use it. I'm not buying one.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? We'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph. Or Trustee Osborne. That's how I used to call him.
Thank you.
Trustee Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to address the issue of the size of the containers, because that's the complaints that I receive. People who, and our own house included, had a 40-some gallon container that we had used for years and years, and got stickers on them saying that it was not the right size. When we were in negotiations with the companies and interviewing them, what the question was asked, do the homeowners have to buy a container from you? Because the other companies that we talked to said, yes, they do. They either have to buy or rent, or it was included in the higher cost. They said, no, the containers that you're using are still fine. I understand the language of the contract actually showed a smaller container, but as has already been stated, for years and years, we've been using the 42, 44, whatever size container that is. I understand they're not in compliance, and we need to get them into compliance, but that I would have appreciated some kind of a warning or some kind of a notification to ease into, if you're going to start enforcing that hadn't been enforced before, that there would be an easing into that. And I realize now they're stopped marking the containers, but I see that as problematic. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
It sounds like there's a long-term issue. Mr. Kadish is right. China, some of the Asian countries, they stopped buying plastic waste from the United States. There is 6 plastic waste streams. PET, which are the water bottles, used to be the largest, which nobody wants anymore. The problem is trash hauler is a multi-billion-dollar industry in southeastern Michigan. And long-term, you guys need to understand what you're going to do with this waste if you're going to charge people to pick it up. In Europe, 25 years ago when I was there, they have cogeneration. They take their waste and they put it through a power plant where they burn gas, natural gas. They inject and they grind garbage, plastic, anything that'll burn, paper, cogeneration. It's environmentally clean. They do it in the Netherlands. You guys have a problem because you're charging us to take care of the problem, only it's not going away. So you guys gotta fix your problem, you gotta work it. It can't sit there and be stagnant for years to come. You got a problem, how are you gonna fix it? Has anybody contacted DTE? They're putting up new power plants. They just put some up in Marysville. And you know, there's a possibility there could be cogeneration, you know, locally. It might take care of, not done. The other thing is it sounds like the residents are asking the board, what's in the contract? What hammer does the Township Board have to make sure that our waste hauler that we chose performs? Well, I look at the contract and I don't see one. The only thing I see in the contract is to break the contract. I don't see any way to hold our current waste hauler to any performance level. And that kind of saddens me. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I think probably another negative complaint that I received a couple calls on is Ms. Vosberg talked about the not picking up if the township could have got some kind of notification about the size of the containers that GFL would not pick up. Calls I got were from residents, areas on the north, probably north of 23 Mile Road, the subdivisions in there where their containers were deemed unacceptable. So one gentleman told me residents were leaving the black bags out there with their garbage. And either the wildlife or the neighborhood dogs or whatever were tearing the bags open, and the net result is we have a blight situation on our hands, or potentially growing out of this type service. And these are the things that we have to address, among other things. And I think I'll turn it back over to Supervisor here. Thank you.
Any further comments on the board? Clerk City Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. What I would like to ask from Green for Life is, and you may be in the process of doing this in terms of being responsive, I think the key is to isolate the issues, and I think we started doing that tonight. We've isolated some of the bulk of the concerns and the complaints into, 2 or 3 main issues. Isolate those issues. I'd be interested in seeing a corrective action plan from GFL within a reasonable period of time, say the next 10 days, 14 days, to see a corrective action plan specifically to address those issues that have been isolated and identified, that we can share with our residents and we can make public. And then what I would like to see further is perhaps another report back, or perhaps invite you back, say in 60 days, so we've gotten through our summer, to have you report to us how those things have been managed, and we can share with you in the meantime as well some additional tweaks to that corrective action plan. So by the end of 60 days, we should have many, if not all of these issues identified, corrective action plans put in place, and that action plan having been implemented, at least for enough time that we can do some analysis in terms of if that's working or not. That's just a brief, a thought that I had while I was sitting here, but perhaps I can work with the supervisor's office to maybe implement that plan and work with GFL to see if they would like to add any additional elements to that, so that our residents know that the issues that they brought forward tonight have been heard, that a plan has been put in place to correct them, and then we can see if that plan is actually having any effect on those issues that we've identified.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Want to echo the corrective action plan model with a caveat, but the issue of recycling seems to me there's no financial incentive to address the recycling issue, because you're paying more, actually, you're paying an additional cost to recycle, yet we know that we have a global problem. And one of the suggestions that I had, at the procurement formation team, whatever that was to say, why are we paying when we know that a large percentage of the things that are put out for recycling end up in the landfill? Because we don't have, I've talked to people from your organization, and when you get a pizza box and you got 4 crusts of pizza inside the box and you go over to recycle the cardboard, the whole can is now literally trash. It's garbage. There's nothing reclaimable about that. But see, recycling are one of those things. Politicians love to talk about recycling, repurposing. So we don't have honest dialogue about the fact that really the recycling that you feel very good about, and the resident who washes meticulously, I know those people. She sounds like one of them. The pizza sauce jar is clear glass. There's not a drop of tomato left in there. If her neighbor is the guy that throws half a slice of pizza in the cardboard box, and then your recycling is his recycling, guess what happens? So the problem is, we know that it's happening. We know that there's no global market for it. You've heard, from very bright people who really do. Mr. Cage is one of those guys. Probably write a dissertation. You could probably get legitimately a white paper from him on recycling and the Asian recycling. But we know that, and everybody knows that. You're paying more for recycling because it's an inconvenience. It's not politically expedient to tell you that it doesn't matter. We'd rather have you feel good about it, and then we'll talk about recycling, but it's not recycling, and you're just paying for it. That was a discussion that was brought, and we could fix that. We should fix that. It's a contractual long-term fix. Tonight, GFL came in to hear acute things, what's going on right now. I would like to add to the corrective action specifically some areas that are problematic, again, for me, without rehashing the whole deal. When our residents call into GFL, you hear widely, there's a disparity in how they're received, and I've experienced myself after our board approved the contract, and it was, I waited about 30 days, and I knew it was cheaper to pay the $3. My thought process was, I'll lease it from you for $3. If you blow the wheels of the lid off, it's your can, and you just give me another one, and I'll give you another $3. I didn't want you having my 95 or whatever. And I called just to order the can. And the person was very polite, but she clearly did not know Chesterfield policy. And she said, we don't have 96-gallon cans available in Chesterfield. You are operating with this. And I said, no. And I didn't tell her I was a board member that just voted on it, but, no, I'm telling you. And she went back, a supervisor came on, and the supervisor assured me that I really didn't know what was up, and eventually we worked it out. The point is that a lot of, I think, calls are being received, and there's a lack, you do different things in different communities based on the contract. And so when our people are calling with legitimate, even well-informed, listen, I have this available, it's not being afforded them because there's some miscommunication on who's handling our account. I think it's critical that contractually we have our appointed person. We should have somebody. And the call log, the complaint log with disposition, Mr. Smith got up, and I happen to know, I don't know Mr. Smith just through Facebook and messaging, but Mr. Smith communicated his problem to me via Facebook. I put him in touch with you, Mr. Munum. You were gracious enough to go through the process you recommended tonight, GFL USA. He completed that process. He got an email back from you, and he screenshotted it and sent it to me, and it said, our records indicate that your address has been serviced. Mr. Smith sent a thank you. Mr. Joseph, thank you, Mr. Munum. And I felt good for about 3 hours until Mr. Smith got home and his trash was in his driveway. It had not been serviced. The reality was the computer indicated, and I don't know how the process works, but the computer indicated a closed account. So we created a ticket, invoice number, whatever you want to call it. He felt serviced until he got home and then had to move the can out of the driveway just to get into his house and then back out. And so there's a breakdown. And I think the corrective action plan should have some benchmarks and some timelines because Mr. Schickman hit it on the head. You have to honor the contract. And I'm cool with the fact that you put in the contract and it's been in the contract that you're only going to take your cans, the 96-gallon cans that you provide, either by rent or purchase, or the resident provides their own. But that can's 35 gallons. It's right there in black and white. There's no grandfather it in. I thought you were serious about that. That we can't. It's contractually, that's what you passed. That's what the board passed. So I am interested in the things, though, that you are required to do, and those are the things that I think fall under what Mr. Schickman was talking about, which is if this were a contractor in his home, the repercussion would be, the response would be non-payment. It would be a failure to perform in non-payment. It's not available to you because the contractor put it on your taxes. You're stuck. So as the board members responsible for your relationship, we brokered the deal. We have an obligation to hold you to the contract, and I would like to see some timelines in that contract. And then I don't know that 60 days is I mean, I think really next board meeting, we should have a corrective action plan, and we should have agreements on the things that we've heard. And then the next move is to go to our attorney to look at what we have under the severability portion of the contract and what we have available to us under the failure to perform part of the contract and what we have available to us under the default contract. And while that's going on, we should be looking at real needs being met by other vendors. So it's a short window. We really do have to respond. I think we really do have to respond. And I think it's a good start just being here and being willing to listen to our residents. But we have to follow it up with some documented action, and I'm confident, Joe. I don't think I've ever sat down with you and not had, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. And I think you've addressed this in a very realistic way. And now we need to be able to go back to our residents and say, people are listening and people are taking care of it with something other than just a handshake between you and I. It has to be something they can see and we can report back on. It's the only fair thing to do.
Any further comments from the board? Thank you, GFL, for coming. We've got a lot of room for improvement. And, thank you. Item 7A, approve a request from JD and SY Inc. for a vending license permit variance for a 20 by 4010 at 29230 23 Mile Road, Chesterfield, for the sale of fireworks from June 24th through July 7th, 2019. Business operating from 9 to 9. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve a request from JD and SY Inc. for a vending license permit variance for a 20 by 4010 at 29230 23 Mile Road, Chesterfield, Michigan 48047 for the sale of fireworks from June 24th through July the 5th, 2019, with business operating hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is there support? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Supervisor Acciavatti. The petitioner, I believe, is here. Any questions for them?
Do we state my name? Jonathan Dadu, 1172 Congress Court, Troy, Michigan. The only thing I wanted to ask, can I change those days to 25th to the 6th?
And that's still 12 days.
Yes.
No, that's actually shorter.
I think this is the date. This is wrong. I think this shows 14 days. So that's the 25th to the 6th would be 12
Instead
days.
of your motion was the 24th through the 5th.
He's shortening by 2 days. He's asking to shorten by 2 days for clarification, correct?
Yes, but there was an amended motion by Clerk Berry for the 24th to the 5th. He's asking for the 25th to the, you're asking for the 24th through the
25th
through the
to the
25th
6th.
through the 6th. Those are the standard of, it's the same one as we did last year.
And
If you want to amend your motion.
I would be willing to amend my motion to reflect June 25th through July the 6th. And the only reason I made my motion the way that I did is that is what was on your original application.
I know. Thank you.
Okay. So if you are asking us to amend it, I will amend my motion to
Continued
reflect
support. Discussion. Fifth one, and this should be the end of it for this season because it starts in a couple of days. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, ayes. Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Trustee Demink.
No.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Motion prevails. 7B, approve a request by the Senior Center to authorize the supervisor to execute the 2020 smart contracts and adopt Resolution 2019-15. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Demink. Discussion, and I do believe some members from SMART are here.
Good evening, not with SMART, but with Richmond Lennox EMS, who provides your local community transportation through a partnership with SMART. I don't want to take any more time than I need to in what has already been a long meeting for all of you, I'm sure. But I think there's one issue worth mentioning tonight that I think will be of interest to the board. Simply put, nothing much has changed with regards to our current service that we provide to your seniors and disabled in the community. That service still operates on Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I know we do some work with your Parks and Rec folks and others on weekend events, your Historical Society here within the community as well. All that goes unchanged. The one issue that we have changed this year, starting just the first part of this month, and it's been recently in The Voice and other, other social media platforms, is a service that we are adding, that we started adding the 1st of June. This involves the EMS through SMART, through our agreement with SMART with the small buses, providing one trip a day to Detroit Metro Airport. It's provided on a first-come, first-served basis, or a first-come, first-call basis, if you will, to get people down to the airport. The only real provisions we have in that is the person has to be in an area that's served by Richmond Lennox's agreement with SMART. So in other words, other parts of Macomb County, this service might not be available to you. It's in areas where communities are using their municipal community credits to fund our local shuttle or dial-a-ride kind of operation. It's available from starting at 5 a.m. and until 7 p.m. We are asking people to make their reservation to use the service within 4 hours ahead of their flight time. Now, the reason is we don't really want people to have to sit around the airport, but more importantly than that, we don't want somebody to miss a flight. And there is no more unpredictable highway in southeast Michigan than I-94. And so we just don't want to get to your house later than we should and have you see the tail of your aircraft leaving the runway. That would be no fun for anyone in this situation. Really our rationale for doing this was simple. I heard loud and clear the voters in the last election when it came to transit. I heard the concerns about services that people were receiving. I know that we were doing a great job with taking care of the seniors and disabled, but we really had limited service to offer to our young families, to our young people in the community, to that 25 to 60-year-old demographic who really doesn't need senior disabled transportation, but is paying a mill to receive something. And this was my effort, although I'm one little fish in a very big sea, this was my effort to provide that something to your residents. So it's working very well so far. I think we're going to see it fill up very fast. So I've only suggested to everyone that I've talked to, as I've been out to communities, it seems like every time I talk at one of these events, the next day the phone rings with 3 or 4 people making reservations. I don't think tonight will be any different. And so I just am encouraging people to call, well in advance. If you call for tomorrow, I can tell you we're already booked. If you call for Friday, I can tell you we're probably open right now. So, but if you have a trip planned for your family, a month or so down the road, certainly give us a call, or a week down the road even, give us a call, and we will certainly make every effort to get you, on the schedule. And there, again, make sure your flight times are in a way that we are operating the service from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. It is our regular phone number for this service, which I think you have on your website already. So you call the regular phone number that you call for smart service in your community. With that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I did read about the airport transportation. I thought it was a great idea. Could you just explain the first call, first serve? So if somebody calls for a date, they're the first one to call, and they need to be there whatever time. And so you agreed that the pickup time will be 7 o'clock. If there's room on the bus and somebody else wants to do the 7 o'clock or however long it takes to get to their place, then they could go on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, but if they wanted to do it later in the day, if their flight was later in the day, they could not because that was your one
That was our
trip.
one operation for the day. That's what we can afford within our current budget, right now.
Okay, so the days that you drive there or the days you drive back, the hours could be different each day,
Absolutely.
depending on the request?
Yes, they could be. They'll be different each day depending on that caller's request. We can envision a scenario where, like you say, some other person will call and also wants to go about that same time of the morning, and we'll be able to get more than one caller. We can also envision a scenario where we'll be going down to pick you up for your return, and somebody calls and says, "Geez, I need to get down to the airport at 3 o'clock," and we're picking up somebody for a return about that time. We may, on that given day, have 2 riders, because we may have taken somebody to the airport in the morning, be picking up a return later in that afternoon, and as opposed to deadheading, if you will, to the airport with an empty bus, we'll certainly put somebody on it. There is nobody that is more committed into your community, I don't think, than I am, as to getting people on those vehicles. And so whatever we can do to make that happen, we'll do. We, like every other governmental organization, have to live within a budget. So we hope this takes off. Bad pun. We hope this works well, and we certainly want to make it as easy for everybody and get as many people on as we can.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board?
Just
Fred,
real quick, Fred Barbrett, I'm the Smart Ombudsman in Macomb County, and I don't know if Jeff mentioned the number, but it's 844-666-5652. Again, 844-666-5662. And the one thing I just wanted to share with you in terms of having a commitment to providing services in this area, one of the things that you're not aware of behind the scenes with the dollars that you're allocating to their program, we work together, Jeff and I, with the other communities to use that as a match to bring other federal dollars back to the region. So these dollars actually end up in about a 2-to-1 return in terms of the services that are being provided. So it's not like we take these funds lightly. We take them and capitalize on them to bring additional federal funds back. And I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Domingue. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye, motion prevails. 7C, approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance 175 prohibiting persons under 18 years of age from possessing tobacco products and vapor products, and prohibiting the sales of tobacco products and vaping products to persons under 18 of age, and repealing all ordinance and/or resolutions in conflict therewith. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve motion to approve introduction and first publication of ordinance number 175.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
Support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion. Director Kirsten is here if you have any questions.
Pretty straightforward ordinance. This is a new ordinance draft for persons under 18 years from possessing or the sale of vaping devices and tobacco for those individuals under 18 years of age.
Discussion. Trustee Anderson.
Yes, sir. I'll support this, but I recall about 20-plus years ago, the board back then passed an ordinance pertaining to anchor-based schools within the Chesterfield Township, that anyone under the age of 18 using or possessing tobacco on school property would be issued a $50 civil infraction. Chief, I think you issued a few of those over at the high school when it was on Sugar Bush. It was a feel-good thing. And I recall a few months down, or a couple years down the road, the former administrator of our 42nd District Court was talking about a backlog on these tickets that were issued to 17 and 16-year-olds. How do you collect them? And I never did find out what happened. It seemed like that program kind of died. I'm reading this. This kind of reminds me of the old that old song, "You're old enough to kill but not to vote," in reference to the draft age of 18 in the Vietnam War. These kids are under 18. They're going to get a civil infraction the first time. They're vaping. What I'm hearing now is vaping is addictive. Second time, it's a civil infraction for someone under 18. I don't know, maybe it's a feel-good thing, but I don't see a lot of merit in it. You know, it's like a punishment thing. And some of these kids, when you talk about smoking, well, they're thinking of the new legal product we have in Michigan called marijuana. That's what smoking is, not tobacco. Vaping is highly addictive with these kids, and I just kind of question the logic of this ordinance. And the second thing is, at what point is there any way of holding the parents or the guardians responsible here too? Thank you for indulging my remarks.
I completely understand, and yes, I think we're going down a road that was traveled some years back. Unfortunately, with the electronic cigarettes that are out there nowadays and the products that you can infuse into those electronic cigarettes is really where we're going to focus our attention at. The school enforcement side, we really don't see a lot of that at this point. The school is managing those. These are really the ones where we confront the minors, I'll say, for lack of a better term, with these products in an environment that what they have infused into the product is really what we're going after. Again, the unsafe product. And the flip side of that is some of the storefronts that are popping up. These components and items can be sold, and we want to keep an eye on what that trend is could potentially be, and we want to have the ability to take some enforcement action when these contacts arrive. And again, I completely agree with your position and understanding.
Any further questions? We'll be back in front of us. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. There's no current state statute that addresses this?
There was one just recently signed by the governor. This kind of mirrors that. This really gives us a little bit more local control over it as far as the interaction with juvenile court or the court system or the parents.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion from the audience? Coming up to the podium and state your name.
Hi, good evening. My name is Louise Mazzoni. I don't know if we've ever done it here, if it's legal here, but I have a cousin down in Ohio whose daughter used to go with an undercover police officer, and she would try to go into a liquor store, party store, whatever you want to call them, and try to buy tobacco. If that child was sold tobacco, then the person who owned the store got the fine. She did this like once or twice a week for the police down in Ohio. So I don't know if we can do that here. If it's legal, I don't know.
I can answer that question, and the gentleman right behind you can give you some details, but you don't like to know when or where, but those type of operations do happen in Chesterfield quite often.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph to approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance number 175. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion prevailed. 7D, approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance number 176, amending the regulations, prohibition and permit requirements for open burning within the Charter Township of Chesterfield and repealing any and all ordinances or resolutions in conflict therewith. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance number 176.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg. Director Kirsten.
This ordinance, we're actually revising. We're actually opening and extending the burn periods, the application for open burn for the township, substantially from May 1st until April 1st until May 21st in the spring, and then in the fall, October 1st through November 21st. This incorporates the current standards that we currently employ in the township, where you have to apply for a burn permit. We've moved that to an electronic version where you don't have to come to the fire station. It's on our website. The homeowner can go on the fire department website, download his information, and he will get a burn permit. Along with that, we've integrated some current standards, current fire department standards, and we've also included a portion of this with some Phragmite control. With cooperation with the DNR and the local residents along the Salt River, we've expanded an opportunity for the residents to burn Phragmites under a controlled application process. It's something that it's an alternative that we'd like to look at, and it's included in this ordinance along with some other updated language to this particular ordinance.
Comments on the board? Concerns from the public? Happy Career Day. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve the first introduction and publication of ordinance number 176. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion prevailed. 70, request the Township Board of Trustees to authorize the Township Supervisor to prepare an agreement with the developer, Clearview Homes, for the participation in the cost of upsizing sanitary sewer trunk main pursuant to the sanitary sewer master plan from Baker Road near Phillip Drive to the intersection of 25 Mile and Baker. The length of the sewer is approximately 3,700 lineal feet, and the upsizing is from 10-inch sewer to 18-inch sewer. I make a motion to approve the request as stated.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Barry. We have a crew here, so.
Yeah, we have
Connor
four.
and JR.
Yep, we have 4 slides to kind of explain the request. The first slide is the northeast corner of the Sanitary Sewer Master Plan. To the north is 26 Mile Road, to the east is Ira Township, to the south is New Baltimore, and then it's I-94 and the Salt River kind of make up this area, this district. Right now it is unsewered. There's water mains at the mile roads and at the north-south roads that the township built, 16-inch water mains. The proposed site is the darker green, 32-acre north of Washington near Baker Road. And then the existing sewer is that red line that goes south on Baker, a quarter mile. So the existing sewer is a quarter mile away from that proposed dark green development.
Kevin, could you show them with your hand, please? Show them where the existing one is, right at the bottom of the page. Yep, and it has to come straight up Baker Road. Yep.
Ooh. So that is the existing current master plan for the area, showing the undeveloped area, the unsewered area, and then the proposed site, and where the master sewer is. And that sewer is an 18-inch sanitary sewer permit per the master plan. I think the next slide is the proposed project. North is facing the board.
Right.
To the right. It's a roughly 70-acre site. The existing sewer, again, is a quarter mile south on Baker Road. 18-inch that it needs to be extended north to Washington, and then they're proposing to run it through the site and get it to their northeast corner of their development. This would open up the remaining 5 or 6 square miles that we saw on the prior map. And again, per the master plan, the sewer would be extended north of Baker, down Washington, and continue north on Baker, parallel to New Baltimore.
The green, the light green shows if we were to put that sewer in on our own, that would be the route, which would be a little bit further and more expensive. And the red represents the route that the developer would take it through the site and get it back to the corner of 25 and Baker Road, 25 Mile and Baker Road.
Trustee Bosberg.
Thank you, and thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you through all your slides?
No, we had 2 more to go, but if you...
I'll wait.
Okay. This slide kind of shows the factors for the extra cost from going to a 10-inch to an 18-inch. The bore at Baker requires a larger diameter casing pipe for an 18-inch as opposed to a 10-inch. The manhole sizes are larger. Instead of 4-foot manholes, now we have to put in 5-foot manholes for an 18-inch pipe. There's more stone in the trench to bed the pipe and bring the stone up to the haunches. That's an increased cost. The sewer leads are different for an 18-inch concrete pipe as opposed to a 10-inch sewer pipe. They're more expensive. And then the biggest cost factor is the 10-inch truss pipe compared to the 18-inch concrete pipe. So those are the factors that add up to the cost, the increase in cost from a 10-inch sewer to an 18-inch sewer. And right now, that estimated increase is $240,000. And then one more slide, or wait, did you? And here is our projected recovery costs. I actually can't read those here.
So the first 1,100 feet coming up Baker Road to Washington, we estimate it with the acreage that's there at, this is just for the front debt service fee, approximately $132,000 of recovery. The off-site taps for that area, we figure approximately 20 taps at a little over $2,000 a tap generates $41,000. The on-site taps from the subdivision be at least 67 taps at the 2,000, recoups $137,500 for a total of over $300,000 just to get it up to that corner, that 25 in Baker. These are preliminary and estimated.
Any questions for the blue shirts? Trustee.
So.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. you'd like to...
Yep. What our ask is tonight is to have the Township Attorney put this into an agreement. We're asking for your guys' blessing on this. We feel it is vital to keep the infrastructure going and the main trunk lines, to keep moving out to the northeast corner of the township. And we can recoup the money. It might not be in one day, but we will recoup the money. These guys are going to go and put this sub in right away and probably sell it out very fast. There's no downfall to this, and it's less than half the price if we were to put it in ourselves. So we feel it is an opportunity for us to get on board and get the sewer up to 25 Mile and Baker Road.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I thought I heard when you read it to allow the supervisor to do it, but
It's the township, the attorney.
the wording is the attorney, and that's same, does not change.
Correct. I'll reread the motion. before
Okay, and then I have, I guess I have a question for the blue shirts or the supervisor, whomever. That cost, that's our cost to get it there, but then the developer pays for the subdivision? Could you explain why we're paying for any of it?
The development requires a 10-inch sewer for that development. The township requires an 18-inch sewer to serve the 5 or 6 square miles beyond their development. So we're asking for the difference of the 10-inch sewer to the 18-inch sewer. They only need a 10-inch sewer for their development, the size for their development. The township is requiring, per the master plan, an 18-inch sewer, again, to serve the off-site property up to 26 Mile Road.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
So I'm looking at this financial information on the back side of this executive summary. Recommended funding is from the Sewer and Water Fund Balance Account. Payment will be dispersed upon successful completion of this sewer. So the township's going to pay for it, correct?
Pardon me?
The township is going to pay for this when it's complete.
The enterprise fund, the water and sewer fund, it would come out of that.
So
it would pay for the difference of a 10-inch sewer to an 18-inch sewer.
the difference.
The difference in cost.
And you've already got estimates on this is a better deal going with the developer who's developing 32 acres. I don't know. This is a better rate according to what you're saying. Have you checked with any other installations of this type work?
No, it's preliminary. That plan is as far as that plan has gotten so far. The developer's looking for some kind of agreement with the township before they, proceed with full design engineering and full
All due
construction
respect,
documents.
we have a term called a swag system.
No, we've spoken to contractors.
I'm sorry.
I understand what swag means. We've spoken to contractors. We've gotten comparable unit prices for 10-inch sewer, 13 feet deep, 18-inch sewer. So we have comparable recent prices, but we don't have final design prices for this project.
We're not necessarily looking at locking down numbers. We're looking for permission to draft an agreement. I'm sure this is going to go out for several different contractors to bid on. We're not looking to lock down numbers tonight. This is not just going to go to a no-bid contract.
Treasurer LaFatta.
I'm just curious, in the agreement, since we're not going to do the construction, the developer is there going to be a bond put in the contract or something so that the maintenance of this thing's going to be covered for a couple of years or something?
Yes.
So that we're protected?
Yes.
Okay.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, who's going to design this? What agency? Yeah.
It would be their design engineer. Sharp Engineering is their design engineer. It would be reviewed and approved by the township. The construction would be reviewed and approved and accepted by the township also.
Okay.
And then once the sewer is built per township standards, then we would recommend payment.
Would you provide that review with your engineering background?
Yeah, whoever, it's probably going to be one of our engineering firms that does the review.
AEW?
One of the three, not necessarily AEW.
Not necessarily, okay. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Who's the developer?
Clearview Homes.
Who's Clearview Homes?
Clearview Homes is that gent right back there.
And in the bid and award process, we have the executive summary. Sewer is designed, permitted, and constructed by the developer. Township will review and approve the design, permitting, and construction of the sewer. So we're just going to oversee all of this? We're not doing any of the construction?
They're going to prepare the construction plans. They're going to get a permit from the road commission, from the DEQ, all the necessary agencies that have to review and approve the plans.
Yeah.
The township will also review and approve the plans. During construction, the township inspects or observes construction to make sure it's built right. So they're preparing the plans, they're obtaining the permits. The township engineering is one of the permits they have to obtain.
All right, I won't elongate it. I'm not for it. I have a whole host of reasons why, but my concern, one, is on the tap fees. We keep referring to it as revenue and recouping, and I don't like that because we've already been blasted in court with referring to our tap fees as revenue. They can't be revenue, according to, basically the Supreme Court, which found us in unconstitutional in essence. So we're doing things. I don't like the tap fees being cited as revenue. But the other question that I have is the DPW plan, and this is going back a few years, right? So there was a DPW plan that was a big topic of conversation during all of our water and sewer rate advisory boards. And in that plan, there was a capital improvement that listed at that time 2016 all the way to 2020. $4.5 million roughly per year. We're at the point now where we should be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $20 million investment in capital improvements for existing problems. Mr. Connington, you came, you and Mr. Johnson, you reported that we had several things in our township that were at level 4 failure. There were critical failure rates, millions of dollars of infrastructure improvement. And I know everyone's excited about going into the northwest quadrant and providing somebody a shovel-ready development. But whatever happened to all of the capital improvements that the Water and Sewer Fund, the Enterprise Fund, which we heard from tonight is doing okay. Consistently, revenue exceeds expenditures in the water department. I don't see anything going into the capital improvement, and I don't want to get a lecture tonight on infrastructure, and if we're not growing, we're dying. We have existing infrastructure that's been horribly neglected for decades. We're doing nothing there, and we're talking about increasing and surpassing 10-inch requirements and going to 18 and all that kind of stuff. What about the existing level 4 things that you were concerned about?
We do have 2 projects underway that this board has approved in the last 6 months. One of them being the water station. I don't want to call it a pit, but a water meter station that we're rebuilding and bringing out of the ground at 25.5 in Gratiot. We're also phase 1 of the 23 Mile Road relocation. We're doing the tie-ins on the south side of 23 Mile Road to make that more, what's the right word?
Reliable.
More reliable, so when we go to start replacing the bigger main on the north side, we have better water reliability. So we have been pushing to get projects done.
It probably wouldn't surprise you if I told you that when this document was put forward as critical, there were probably 30 additional capital improvements that were identified as priorities in the capital outlay plan that you gave to us. You can cite 2. The one you mentioned was a 2016 projected capital improvement. Why are we investing and looking at adding to the system when we're in such disrepair in other areas?
We feel it's the right thing to do to move forward. And it's extending our sewer that we can get a lot more service out of going to the northeast quadrant.
I realize I'm putting you in a spot, but if my roof is caving in, I don't look to put a new screened-in porch on the back, right? So we are taking in incredible risk with existing level 4 failures you outlined, and you're talking about an enhancement, and I get it, but I don't know that it's moving forward. I really am concerned about existing infrastructure and what we're doing there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Treasurer LaFato. Oh, no, I'm sorry, did you want to speak quick? I'll go to Clerk Perry first, and then I'll come back to Treasurer LaFato.
You'll have my support on this item. I think it's the right thing to do. We have to make investments somewhere, and we need to be able to open up the possibilities. I'm sensitive to the issues that have been addressed, but I think this is the right way to go.
Treasurer Lovato. Excuse me.
It seems like we like to, do things in a hurry all the time. If we don't have enough time to get some solid numbers, but we have time to put a legal agreement together. And, when somebody mentioned it was going to go from a 10-inch to an 18-inch, I went and pulled our asset management plan that was part of the SAW grant that we paid $3.2 million for. Yep. And on table 4, they've got pipe rehabilitation replacement unit cost per foot. And they have a 10-inch cost at $40 a foot, and they got an 18 at $60 a foot. And if you take that over 30, the total difference is like $80,000, not $240. And I kind of frown every time we pay for information, and then when I try to use it, it doesn't seem to equate in the system. It's kind of funny that way. And the other thing is I looked at the asset management plan. When you look at upsizing pipes and everything else, there's calculations in there about how many households there's going to be, how many gallons they use per hour, and what it takes. Do we have these calculations?
Yeah, the request is based on the current master plan.
Well, that current...
So the master plan takes into account the undeveloped property.
Well, wait a minute, though. The current master plan has a disclaimer in there saying that these are only projections and they're not accurate. That we already went through that with the Northwest Quadrant. That I mean, I brought that out. I said, when we're doing this study, there's already projection in there, and the projection actually has a disclaimer in it, so that it's not accurate. It needs to be revisited before any construction is done. You want me to pull it out?
We're not doubting you.
What? Well,
no, but we're talking about how we move forward with new, upsizing and everything else. How a master plan is supposed to work, and I don't think we've done any of that yet. That's what That's why we have scope changes.
Any further comments on the board? This will be back as a draft agreement, and I don't know if Mr. Siebert would be willing quickly to discuss agreements like this in the neighboring communities that maybe you put together and the normality of it, and maybe just touch base a little bit on that.
Well, I can tell you that they're not uncommon. It's obviously a policy decision of the board. I've done one as recently as last year for Washington with a private developer that was running a public line through the site, and the township agreed to pay almost $400,000 to have it oversized from the size that the developer needed to the size that the township requested for future township development. But again, that's a different community with different needs, but it's a very common agreement. I've probably done a dozen of them over the last decade.
Let's go up to the public.
I kind of agree with Trustee Joseph on this. Was part of that group when we went through the whole scenario as to what's in the enterprise fund, how much should go into the enterprise fund, and what's to be done with the excess amount, which was supposed to go back and replenish or redo the existing sewer, some of which were 50 years old. The water lines, the sewer lines aren't that old, but a lot of that money should be going to upgrading our existing water lines. 23 Mile Road, it's been 2 years, and 23 Mile Road, I guess you're just going through the engineering done, so I don't think you're going to see 23 Mile Road done this year even, and that's only half of it. Now you're trying to take money out of that enterprise fund to do this, which may not be a bad idea, but the expenditure recovery you're talking about, you'd get that regardless when those taps are made in that particular subdivision. That's not additional income. If he puts in his 10-inch line and connects to your 18-inch line, excluding that outside, that 18-inch line going all the way, you still get that tap money. So that's not additional money you're going to recoup. That's money you get whether he goes with his 10-inch line or not. So basically you're asking to take money out of the enterprise fund that could be used on replacing some of the water lines you got. I think on your street, Point Lakeview, you got the oldest water line in the district. if I remember right, it was all the 23 mile is bad. I was told my street should be in line with it. There's so many repairs on it. In fact, we had Kevin out a couple years ago because of the bad taste we had in the water. Now, I think instead of looking for the future, that you have no idea what's going to go into that other area you're trying to connect to with the 80-inch line. Take care of what you can do in here first. And then when it comes time, if you got prospects out there, then put that sewer in. Doesn't make any sense to commit yourself to $250,000 that you've got no return on yet.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? I think it should go without saying that I strongly support the concept, and I'm excited to see the actual agreement once it's drafted by the attorney. And I won't give you a quote-unquote lecture on this today, because I think you've heard it enough. Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry, to approve the request from the Township Board of Trustees to authorize Township Attorney to prepare an agreement with the developer, Clearview Homes, for the participation in the cost of upsizing the sanitary sewer trunk main pursuant to the sanitary master plan from Baker Road near Phillip Drive to the intersection of 25 Mile and Baker. The length of the sewer is approximately 3,700 lineal feet, and the upsizing is from 12-inch sewer to an 18-inch sewer. Clerk Berry, please call the roll. From a 10-inch sewer to an 18-inch sewer. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Treasurer LaFata.
No. Thank you.
7F, request from the Facilities and Operations Director to cancel services with Leo Pest Control and Orkin and solidify a one-year commercial pest control agreement with Rose Pest Solutions, which would not exceed $4,904 to service the following township facilities: the Police Department, Fire Station Number 1, and 3 municipal offices, and the DPW building. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Support by Trustee DeMink. Any questions for Director Sonnenberg? Trustee or Clerk Berry.
Just a comment. Thank God it's about time.
You're welcome.
Many fair board members. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee DeMink. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee DeMink. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move it up to, there are no addendum. Public comment. State your name for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Cole, and I'm here representing the Chesterfield Senior Planners. We're a group that makes mats for shelters, that provide services for homeless, and that means men, families, children. Our group has started here at Chesterfield in January, and we've grown to about 25 women. And we also have there's a school in Richmond that is providing bags, cutting them, rolling them. Then we have Liz Burton here in Chesterfield. She does work with special needs kids at the Green School. And she's been having the kids cut the bags, roll them, bring them to us so we can crochet mats. So we feel very, very proud of our group, and we've been growing and looking for new recruits, and we've already delivered David Joseph, trustee. He took some mats for us in February, and he took them somewhere in Mont Clemens. And then 2 months ago, we went to St. Margaret's in St. Clair Shores, and they have a wonderful shelter there. And we took 15 mats there, and they were grateful. And we've got just about enough mats to make another delivery. And the reason I'm here is because you all know David Joseph, Cindy Berry, Daniel Acciavatti, you all know that we have been patiently waiting for use of the senior center where we can comfortably work, not mess up your lovely conference room, not mess up the south conference room like we do, leaving a mess behind because the cuttings have to be swept. They cannot be picked up by hand. And we could do that in the senior conference room. And our question is, why? We're all seniors, 60 to 80 years old, and the senior center is supposed to be for us. We're all taxpayers. We all live in Chesterfield. We all feel that we're entitled to that senior group. It's not like we're asking for any kind of favors, but it's there for senior use. Card playing is wonderful. I'm a card player. I love to play cards. But do they come before a voluntary activity that is providing services? And we're just disappointed that the township hasn't supported us and allowed or somehow told Miss Sarah Rose that we should be entitled to use of that room. They were using this room to play cards last Thursday, and we were squeezed into the little conference room there. The women were sitting on the floor. There wasn't enough room. There wasn't enough chairs. But the seniors were in here playing cards. Well, okay, they got their schedule, but we still feel that some consideration should be given to our group. One of our people spoke to Mr. Tim Novak in New Baltimore. He's the Parks and Rec director. He said, I would be proud to have your group here in my facility. And so if Chesterfield doesn't want us, we're going to go to New Baltimore. Plain and simple. I'm sorry, but we tried. You know, we really, really tried. And we feel that we're doing a community activity, and we should have access. We appreciate the fact that you let us use this room, but it would be a lot easier for the women that are hauling the bags, the mats, the whatever, all the way around into here, from the back into here. We could park right by the senior center entrance, come in, do our thing, clean up our mess, and get out. All we ask is for just a designated time when we can use the facility. And we feel as taxpayers we're entitled to that. So again, I'm asking, please, council, please do something to get us some space. And if not, like I said, we don't want to move. We're Chesterfield originators, and we want to stay here. But I mean, if somebody is offering us facility, we'll probably go. So anyway, that's my public comment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Let's bring up to the board, Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. You know, again, long board meeting, so I won't belabor the points that we've already discussed here. Again, the infrastructure, I can appreciate the looking to grow, and I know that the developer who has, you know, it doesn't save him any money. He's going to put in a 10-inch line. He's required to do so, and I understand that the 18-inch line then somehow, you know, helps us for development north of that and puts us in a great position should that become available. The problem is, you know, you have 30 million easily documented by DPW. So we have all of this level 4 failure potential, and we talk about the master plan, of course, is a recommendation, and the sewer master plan says if you're going to build up here, you should have this to accommodate that, and I understand that. But how do you grow on a foundation with a system that is 30 million easily just documented from 2016? If we're just going to hold true to what we said a few years ago, you have millions of dollars of projects, and I don't know what those who are in favor of this are going to say to residents when there's a catastrophic failure and they have water, sewer in their basements. I don't know how you plan to handle that. Maybe you can tell them that this is about growing, and growing is a good thing, and you know, you could talk to them about that. and they'll feel better about sewage in their basement. I don't know. All I can do is keep bringing the points as they come, and if you say you need $4.7 million in 2016 to avoid all these catastrophic things, and we do a fraction of that, and then in 2017, same thing, 2018, 2019, we say, we've got to take care of what could come to us in 2025. It's the right thing to do, because if we're not growing, we're dying. Those are not going to hold for people when they have sewage in their basements, and you can direct those questions to those who thought this was a good idea. Again, the trash is an issue that needs to stay on top of. I believe that the recommendation for a corrective action plan is well warranted, and now we need to hold people accountable for that corrective action plan. We've laid out some pretty specific demands, and you know, I think we need to hold people to the contract. Lastly, just addressing Ms. Cole, I don't know how to be any more clear about this. In February, Ms. Cole came forward. She had a request to use the senior center. I came to the township and met with the Plarners, and the advertisement that they were sort of making in terms of joining their group presented in a way that it was an event or an activity for the benefit of the homeless population. And that was not consistent with utilization in the senior center for the grant that funds the senior center. Those are senior activities, and so when we talked, and the focus then was, this is seniors. We're just talking about the product that we do after we get together for fellowship and exchange stories while we're planning. We have a win-win. We take that product, and then we give it to the homeless, and it's a win-win. In terms of being grant compliant, you know, I spent considerable time investigating that and learned more than I ever thought I needed to know about this particular type of funding, and contacted some folks in the county who are the overseers of this grant. And at the end of the day, for me, it's 100% grant compliant. It is Chesterfield seniors in a Chesterfield senior center doing senior activities. And so the problem is, the person that runs the senior center does not report to me. In fact, anytime there's an attempt to ask our township employees, if it doesn't come from the supervisor, statutorily, we don't have any say. In fact, Supervisor Acciavatti is the one that needs to address your concern. The board members got an email last week that said very clearly, the buck stops with him. I direct all employees of this township. He included the Michigan Township Charter Act, which outlines his authority regarding the department heads. My department head, I call her into the office and I say, you accommodate the Chesterfield Township Plarners. And we don't let them go to New Baltimore. And we're reasonable with times. We don't want to interrupt existing programming because people that have activities that they look forward to on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. But I understood you to be very flexible. We'll take whatever's available. Just give us a time, and we'll let our ladies know that this is the time. And everything is reasonable, in my opinion, in total grant compliance. This individual doesn't report to me. Just does not report to me. And I'm out of line to suggest anything like that. In fact, the supervisor told the township employees they're not obligated to listen to us. Put them on notice. I can show you the email. It's FOIAble. I have no problem giving it to you. This employee doesn't report to me. If she did, you'd have been in the senior center months ago. You wouldn't be dragging your stuff across this parking lot. You'd be up front parking in what our Pazer study said was probably the best parking lot that we have, is over there on that side. And you wouldn't be lugging all those boxes and all that material in and out of the township. This individual reports to Supervisor Acciavatti, and I don't want to pass the buck, but statutorily, I've been put on notice. It's his call. He's the big house. So I am proud of the residents that came forward to speak today. It's always good. You can always count on action when residents come forward and demand that their tax dollars are spent in a proper way. And that was good to see tonight. And not everybody has to agree with me. I just love it when the place is packed with people, because that's when we get real response. That's when politicians respond. You put some people in the seats and they jump. So I'm glad for that. Not my meeting, Ms. Cole. You have to get addressed by the chairman.
No.
After, we're on board comments. Afterwards, you can touch base with us afterwards. All set, Trustee
Thank you,
Joseph?
Mr. Chairman. I am.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I appreciate the attendance and patience of our resident at tonight's meeting regarding the issues we're having with the GFL. Hope the issues are satisfactorily resolved. We had quite a crowd tonight. It'd be great if we had that every meeting so our residents could see their government in action and how their tax dollars are invested. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Domingo.
Thank everybody that showed up for the conversation, talking about the problems with GFL. Hopefully they can get those rectified with some of the things that were discussed tonight. I'd also like to thank Director Kirsten for his report. I have two things I'd like to mention today. The first is from the library. The 2019 Summer Reading Program for youth, teens, and adults launched on June 14th and is following a space theme with the slogan, A Universe of Stories. There are two components to the summer reading program. First, the program is designed to prevent the summer slide by keeping children reading throughout their summer vacation by keeping a reading log and earning prizes. Second, the library affords free enrichment programs for a variety of ages and interests. Because of many residents, the public library is the only community space available during the summer where they can participate in free educational and cultural activities. Story times for children will be held at the library as well as the Brandenburg Park. Librarians also work in partnership with L'Anse Creuse Public Schools' free lunch program, offering activities at Fairchild Lake Trailer Park and Aspen Creek Apartments. The Michigan Science Center will be bringing hands-on activities to the library, and we have also begun another new partnership with the Warren Astronomical Society to teach residents how to use the new telescopes that are available to be checked out. Telescopes were paid for by the LSTA grant. You can learn more about these programs at the www.chelibrary.org. Secondly, also on a library issue, the library purchased property a while ago on 21 Mile Road, south side, east of Sugar Rush Road, for possibly building their own library. Over the last 2 weeks, the library board, which is a separate entity from this township board, interviewed 3 different architectural firms that they will be making a decision on the architectural firm that they want to design their library. That should be tomorrow night at their meeting. More to follow. Next is from Parks and Rec. Who doesn't like a car show and an outdoor movie filled with history, engines, food, and fun? Join us for Racing to the Drive-In on Thursday, June 27th from 6 to 9 at Stahl's Automotive Museum. It's the perfect chance for your family to come out and play together in a multi-generational event free of charge. Brought to you by the Selfridge Chesterfield Lions and Macomb Self-Storage. Plan ahead to spend your Thursday nights at Brandenburg Park enjoying the sounds of summer along the bay. Our summer concert series has doubled in size and begins on July 11th and continues through August 15th. This year's lineup includes the Red Leader Band, Audrey Ray, Mumford & Sons, and Invasion, Jukebox Junkies, and 80s Incorporated, the Ultimate Tribute Band. Concerts in the parks are well attended, begin at 7 p.m. National Coney Island and Kona Ice will have products available for purchase. Entry is $5 per car. It's also time to plan ahead to spend the night with your family at Pollard Park. We're backpacking our way to school during this late summer sleepover. It costs us $5 residents, $10 non-residents for the sunrise to sunset camp out on Friday, August 23rd. S'mores, outdoor fun, and games and breakfast will be provided for every camper. Children must be accompanied by an adult to attend, and you must register at our Parks and Recs website. That's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Bosberg.
Thank you. I have nothing to add.
Treasurer's report.
Normally, I don't like taking money out of the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund for infrastructure that usually a developer funds or it's done by assessment. It's taken out of a fund that current users put money into when they actually, pay for the water and sewer, and they pay for their sewer taps and everything else. Taking money out of there does not directly benefit them in any way, and it'll be a long time in the future before I see any of that coming back. I don't see a real solid business plan put forward before we start moving with legal agreements. Whether the developer puts in a 10-inch line to satisfy his needs, or we put in an 18-inch line that right now I don't think we have a business plan for, to me it would be debatable. Thank you.
Clerk's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of days ago in the Macomb Daily and on Channel 4 News as well and other places in the media, you may have heard about a potential millage to be placed on a November 5th ballot that Macomb County is considering to fund jail improvements. That decision has yet to be made. We will keep you informed if that decision is made and that language is approved and there ends up being a November 5th election. We will be notifying all of our registered voters of that. Also, the potential changes or the changes that I have talked about in the past that will be coming to precinct locations as well as precinct numbers and boundaries, those changes will not be in effect for that November election. Those changes will not be in effect until the 2020 election cycle. So if there is a November election, we will make sure that you are aware of that and to know that there will be no changes to your precinct location or to any of your normal procedures on election day. But we will be in continuous contact with you on that issue. Secondly, two remaining events that the Clerk's Department is presenting to you this summer. One is our Community Shred Day. That is the opportunity for residents to bring their sensitive documents here to the township offices to be securely disposed of. That will be Thursday, July the 11th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. You can register for that on our website. It's not required that you register, but we would like for you to do that just so that we have an idea of what the volume is going to look like so that we can have the services, ample services here to accommodate you. Also, secondly, our Veteran Services Day, which I'm, again, very passionate and excited about that I have spoken about before, is Thursday, July the 18th from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. here at the township offices. I highly encourage everyone who is a veteran, knows a veteran, please make sure they know that this is going to be available to them. This is an opportunity for veterans and their families to come to one place to access all of the agency or all of the government agencies that provide services to them. That's federal, state, as well as county and local levels, as well as a variety of other entities that are offering benefits to our veterans. So I highly recommend that you come and take advantage of that. Zuccaro's will be serving dinner to veterans and their guests that day as well. So please, again, go to our website and register for that so we can make sure that we have enough for everyone, because once the dinner provisions run out, then we'll have to start turning people away. So we'd like to make sure we have enough for everyone. So please register on our website for that, and please make sure that if you are a veteran or if you know of a veteran, it's a phenomenal opportunity to be able to access all of the information to receive the benefits that you have earned in one place at one time. Thank you.
Have a happy and safe 4th of July. Our next scheduled board meeting will be held on Tuesday, July 9th at 7 p.m. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson. We are adjourned. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 10:13 p.m.